Chapter 101. He aggressively chased after Wei Wei Bai, vowing to strangle her. As a result, when he opened the door of Wei Wei Bai's room, he saw Wei Wei Bai hurriedly putting on makeup, foundation, cream, eyebrow pencil. Anyway, the steps were all messed up. The more flustered her face was, the worse it was. What was going on? Hipon was still angry that she didn't know what was good for her, and kicked him away. He said in a particularly cold tone, "Wei Wei Bai, what are you doing?" When Wei Wei Bai heard his voice, the lipstick in her hand trembled. It fell out of her lips and directly to her cheek. When she saw that it was Hipon, she immediately put on a cold face. "You're back?" This was the usual attitude of Wei Wei Bai towards him, reserved, cold, and annoying. But today's Wei Wei Bai, Hipon looked at her messy makeup and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He also noticed that her fingers were shaking, as if she was very nervous. Could it be that Bai Wei Wei was always so nervous when facing him? Obviously, she was such a cold, arrogant, and annoying woman. Suddenly, Wei Wei Bai's eyes changed. She looked down at his body, then blushed. She didn't open her eyes, and her fingers clenched harder. Hipon felt that he was cold. He looked down and saw that he was naked. He calmly walked to Wei Wei Bai's side, pulled the quilt from her bed, and wrapped himself. Wei Wei Bai was stiff and didn't dare to move. She was like a pitiful prey that met a lion. She could only tremble. Hipon noticed this detail, and suddenly the shame in his heart dissipated. It turned out that Wei Wei Bai was afraid of him. He glared at Wei Wei Bai. "If you're sick, go see a doctor. Don't call me in the middle of the night. You're like a hanged ghost, annoying people." After that, Hipon paid special attention to Wei Wei Bai. He found that after she heard this sentence, the blush on her face disappeared in a flash, leaving only a pale white. He could actually manipulate her emotions at will. Hipon smiled coldly and turned away. There were so many people who liked him, so what did Wei Wei Bai count for? If she hadn't suppressed him back then, he wouldn't have hated her so much. Hipon walked to the door and suddenly remembered that he had no clothes. What was he going to wear? He called Xiaomu. "Bring me a set of clothes, a hat, and sunglasses." Xiaomu immediately agreed, and soon he drove here. When he saw Hipon open the door, his eyes widened. Hipon was not wearing clothes? He was the clearest about Hipon and Wei Wei Bai. Although these two people were married for many years, they were not married. Did Hipon suddenly think things through last night? After Hipon took the clothes, he locked Xiaomu outside, then quickly changed his clothes and put on his sunglasses and hat. When they were about to leave, Wei Wei Bai suddenly chased after them from upstairs. She hadn't fully recovered yet. She was on the verge of collapsing as she walked, and when she reached the door, she tripped and fell. Hipon had already gotten in the car. Xiaomu was a little embarrassed. "Uncle, do you want to go down and take a look?" Hipon pursed his lips and frowned. "Drive. Why do you care about that woman?" He must have been out of his mind to be so soft-hearted towards her last night. Did that woman think that she could climb all over him just because he was nice to her? Dream on. The car sped away. The system and Wei Wei Bai were speechless. This was the first time she had seen such an annoying male lead. Wei Wei Bai got up from the ground and touched her forehead. Her fever had subsided. She wanted to eat her fill first, took the medicine again, and then tidied herself up before sitting in front of the computer. She opened all the major forums and began to roll up her sleeves to write hateful posts. Breaking news: the movie king is actually a gigolo, already kept by a rich woman. Squinting eyes face, system. Prince Charming, come here / system. Prince Charming, come here / system. Prince Charming, come here, system. Prince Charming, come here, system. Prince Charming, come here address. Chapter 102. The content of the post was very detailed. It said that when Hipon was not famous in his early years, to get a good role, he directly slept with a female star in the circle. Although the female star was now in a retired state, at that time, she was a famous movie queen. After Hipon slept with the movie queen was very satisfied with his skills, so she kept him as her mistress. She gave him several important resources and let him soar. Hipon not only lived a life of being kept, but also lived a very luxurious life. He often bought dozens of luxury cars and watches. He also bought several villas. The money was not only earned by his acting, but also by the movie queen-level rich woman. After Wei Wei Bai finished writing the post, she began to post photos. Heepon's villa, the multi-million watch he wore when he went in and out of celebrity events. There was also the car he drove that cost tens of millions. There were also several photos of Wei Wei Bai's neighborhood. In the photo, Heepon was wearing a hat. It was a screenshot from the surveillance. Then Wei Wei Bai used a variety of accounts to post it on the internet. She also went on Weibo, opened a small account, and copied the content of the post. Heepon was a hot topic. As long as his name was mentioned, it basically took less than 2 hours to see him on the hot topic. Although there was no specific name, Heepon, coupled with such an ecstatic description, not a fool would know that it was talking about the famous Heepon in the entertainment industry. Heepon's fans were the most fearsome fans in the entertainment industry. Wherever he went, there were corpses everywhere and blood flowed like a river. This post was obviously slandering their Pon, so they rolled up their sleeves and started to tear it. Passerby A. Send the blogger a pot lid. Keep it well. No thanks. Pon's #1 fan. My Pon is invincible in the world. The blogger looks like a rat. My Pon needs to be kept as a mistress? What a joke. #2 fan arrived. Bitch. Slandering without any technical content. If you have the guts to leave your address, I will send you a kitchen knife tomorrow. Fan #3. Ha 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 ha. The best joke of the year. Who doesn't know that our Bo works 365 days a year? How can he have time to be kept as a mistress? Even if we say he is kept as a mistress, he is kept by us fans. Bystander. Does the blogger need a wholesale pot lid? How about a manhole cover? Anti-fans. I was wondering how Heepon, that greasy ugly freak, could become a film emperor. It turns out that he was kept by someone. Fan #4. To the one above, I've been unhappy with your family for a long time and want to tear you apart. You say that I, boundless world beauty, am ugly? If you have the guts, show me your photos and fight. Anti-fans. What's wrong? Did I touch your sore spot? Heepon is nothing more than a kept man. The fans were enraged. They caught the anti-fans and scolded them. The anti-fans were also angry. They posted ugly photoshopped pictures and groundless rumors to attack. Wei Wei Bai's Weibo post went viral. Within a few hours, it reached the top of the search rankings. Heepon was kept by someone. Heepon was an ugly freak. Heepon was a rich woman. Heepon was given money for plastic surgery. Xiaomu also received a call from the public relations department. He carefully walked to Heepon's side. And go. People are scolding you on Weibo. Heepon was upset. He looked at the script and said angrily, I'm so popular. How can no one scold me? Don't bother me with this kind of trivial matter. Xiaomu also felt that this kind of thing was not a big deal, so he didn't say anything. /T. Chapter 103. Heepon found that he couldn't read the script at all. After a while, he went to check his phone, but when he didn't see what he wanted to see, he threw it away. After a while, he repeated this action. Xiaomu asked strangely, Ngu, what's wrong? Heepon said coldly, nothing. He didn't want to admit it at all. He was worried about whether Wei Wei Bai had fallen to her death. After all, her body didn't seem to be well. What did it matter to him whether she was well or not? Humph. On the other hand, Wei Wei Bai was eating sunflower seeds and reading the comments on Weibo. Heepon was really too popular. He had a lot of fans and haters, and other companies paid even more to slander him. After all, he was so popular, but the key was that he grabbed a lot of resources and didn't rest at all. All the good scenes were taken by him, and others could only drink the soup. So there were a lot of stars who hated him. And Heepon, in addition to the fact that he was a big shot, there was really nothing else to be said. There were no scandals, his work attitude was professional, and he loved his fans. Other companies didn't have a chance to slander him. Now that there was finally a decent piece of black material, it was simply a national celebration. Heepon's fans rolled up their sleeves, picked up knives, set up machine guns, pulled up banners to protect Heepon, and began to slaughter the whole network. Fight haters, fight the army, and fight against the company. Anyway, they had to fight these black materials. No one could say that Heepon was bad. This was the attitude of Heepon's fans. Wei Wei Bai saw that her post was suppressed, and she immediately began to rummage through the cabinets to find something. System. What are you looking for? Wei Wei Bai. Selling contract. Wei Wei Bai found the contract signed by Hipon. His name was blocked, and some conditions were also blocked. Only Hipon's signature and the tens of millions above it were exposed. This was simply ironclad evidence. Then Wei Wei Bai took a photo and uploaded it, and her fingers quickly began to post a new Weibo. The unbearable past of a certain movie king, who sold his body for tens of millions, was shameless and immoral, and even had a group of crazy drama queen fans dancing wildly. As soon as the photo was revealed, the fans immediately recognized that it was indeed Hipon's autograph, coupled with the contents of the contract. The fans were completely enraged. The black powder was ignited. Hipon's face was red and black. Xiaomu immediately knew about this. He immediately rushed to Hipon. Ngu, it's not good. Things have been exposed. Hipon absent-mindedly looked at his phone. What's the matter? Little Mu showed him his phone and zoomed in on the photo of the contract. Hipon was originally sitting, but after seeing the photo, he immediately stood up. His face was particularly ugly. The contract was in Wei Wei Bai's hands. That woman actually dared to reveal their secret marriage. Xiaomu immediately said, "Brethren, everyone on the internet is saying that you're a kept woman. They're saying that you're a gigolo who lives off a woman." Paan's face quickly became gloomy, and his eyes turned red with anger. He laughed twice. "Very good, Wei Wei Bai, you're looking for death." After he finished speaking, he immediately ran out and drove all the way to Wei Wei Bai's house. Hipon got out of the car and angrily took out the key to open the door. As a result, he couldn't open it. Wei Wei Bai even changed the door lock. Hipon was even more convinced that Wei Wei Bai had a guilty conscience. He angrily slammed the door. "Wei Wei Bai, get out here." As a result, after 10 minutes of slamming, there was no sound from inside. "Wei Wei Bai, if you don't open the door, I'll kill you." And Chapter 104. Are you dead? Give me a shout. Wei Wei Bai. Hipon slapped the door until it hurt, but no one opened the door. Did she faint because of poor health? He thought of the way she fell when he left in the morning. His heart suddenly felt anxious, but it was different from anger. Just as Hipon was about to smash the door open, Wei Wei Bai's voice suddenly sounded. "Pon?" Hipon looked back and saw Wei Wei Bai wearing a white dress and a light blue windbreaker. She was holding a bag of food in her hand and looking at him in surprise. Hipon's anger reached its peak and rushed to Wei Wei Bai. He did not hesitate to slap the food in her hand and then reached out to grab her wrist. "Wei Wei Bai, you don't want to live anymore." Wei Wei Bai's eyes were still full of surprise, but seeing him like this, the surprise was covered by coldness. "You came here today to say these words?" Hipon coldly snorted. "I thought your temperament had changed. After 5 years, I still haven't slept with you. Are you in a hurry? You're such a vicious woman." Wei Wei Bai's face turned pale. She sneered. "Yes, I spent money to buy you. A bodhisattva who can't be touched or scolded. I've worshipped you for 5 years, but in the end, you're called a poisonous woman." Hipon hated it the most when people talked about this. It was the most shameful thing in his life. He said fiercely, "Why? Do you regret it?" Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips, and there seemed to be water floating in her eyes. She didn't open her eyes. I really regret meeting you." Hipon felt like he was stabbed, and the pain made him irritable. He sneered. "What? Isn't it too bad to see but not eat? I'll let you get your money's worth." Wei Wei Bai was puzzled, but Hipon had already moved aside. "Open the door." Wei Wei Bai straightened her body and pretended to be calm as she opened the door. Halfway through, she said, "I changed the combination lock. The previous lock required a key, so it was inconvenient." When the door opened, Wei Wei Bai couldn't help whispering, "The password is your birthday?" Hipoxin was teased for a moment, but he was so angry that he didn't realize it. However, the favorable impression points betrayed him. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 10. Wei Wei Bai had just opened the door when she heard Hipon kick the door shut. Before she could turn around, she was pushed to the ground. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. She turned around and saw him against the light. looking at her like a demon. Do you think I have a good temper? Do you know how long I've been telling myself not to kill you? Hipone reached out and unbuttoned his collar and began to undress. His eyes were full of anger. Since you think you've made a loss, I'll let you recoup some of your losses. Wei Wei Bai was a little scared. Hipone, are you crazy? Hipone threw his shirt away directly, his handsome face with a trace of cruel evil. I'm crazy? You're crazy. You actually leaked our original contract. If you were obedient and divorced, I wouldn't have messed with you. Now, I'm going to ruin you and make you suffer. Wei Wei Bai seemed to think of something. She immediately said, What are you talking about? I don't understand. I didn't show anyone the contract. Hipone was fed up with her sophistry. If it wasn't her, who was it? Was it his own sleepwalking? He bent over and pinched Wei Wei Bai's face with his hand and began to tear her clothes with the other hand. And the Chapter 105. Wei Wei Bai finally panicked. What are you doing? Hipone was impatient. Isn't this what you want? When you bought me, wasn't this what you wanted? I'll satisfy you and let you get your money back. You should be happy. Wei Wei Bai struggled. I don't want to get my money back. Hipone, get out of my way. Hipone was so angry that he couldn't listen to her words. He clasped her hands and raised them above her head. His fingers followed her thighs and directly lifted her skirt, revealing her underwear. You've been coveting my beauty since 5 years ago. Otherwise, why did you desperately suppress me, causing me to owe tens of millions of debts and forcing me to marry you? Wei Wei Bai looked at Hipone in panic. At that time, I was wrong. Now that you have everything you want, you have suppressed me so that I can't enter the entertainment industry. I have already given up. Give up? Hipone didn't expect Wei Wei Bai to say such a thing. Hipone's eyes were cold. That contract was only between him and Wei Wei Bai. He couldn't leak it. So, the only one who leaked it was Wei Wei Bai. He didn't believe that she gave up. This woman must have seen that the contract was about to expire. To keep him, she disclosed their relationship to the public. Now that the internet was abuzz, he was sure that before tomorrow, everyone would know that Hipone, had been kept by this woman. This shame, he finally got rid of. This woman wanted him to carry it for a lifetime. Hipone showed a cruel smile. Do you think you can keep me by leaking the contract? That's not enough. I'll upload your photos to the internet. That'll be the most explosive. With that, he tore her underwear apart with a tug of his fingers. Wei Wei Bai's pupils contracted and her whole body trembled. She wanted to say something, but Hipone had quickly sealed her lips. She wanted to escape, but her limbs were buckled under his body. Even if she wanted to clench her teeth and not let him invade, she couldn't do it. Because his hand firmly grasped her chin, she couldn't escape. This bastard was actually serious. He only had a favorable impression of Tin, and he already wanted to do her. She wouldn't swallow her whole when she broke the 100 mark, right? Wei Wei Bai, Tong Tong, at least give me a function to protect the host. The system watched the show while munching on melon seeds. Protect what? Don't get distracted. Hurry up and struggle, cry, run, and linger. It's too explosive, too exciting, too exciting. It's been a long time since I've watched porn since the ban. It's time for me to eat again. Wei Wei Bai, why isn't such a heartless system being sent back to the furnace to be rebuilt? She was the first to rush up and add firewood. Wei Wei Bai was kissed by him, and her face flushed. Her eyes were full of panic. She found a gap and gasped, Hipone, don't, please. Her long hair was disheveled, and her clothes were in tatters. Her eyes were filled with tears, and the corners of her eyes were red. Her appearance was simply stunning. Hipone originally came with a punishing mentality and felt that it was unlikely that he would really be interested in her. But when he saw Wei Wei Bai lying so delicate and powerless under him and heard her soft and fragile voice begging for mercy, he was shocked. A hot feeling rushed from his back and rushed to his lower body. It turned out that this shameless woman also had such a weak side. Hipone suddenly wanted to hear more of her begging for mercy. He suddenly wanted to control her and not let her humiliate him again. Chapter 106. His hand tore off the last of her clothes, and her naked body appeared in front of him. Hipon's eyes turned red. Any punishment disappeared from his mind. He just wanted to use another method to kill her. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 15. When Wei Wei Bai thought that she was doomed and could only be forced to sell herself, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Ngu, open the door. It was Xiao Mu's voice. Hipon was in high spirits and said bluntly, "Get out." Xiao Mu was scared and quiet for 2 seconds, but the next second he desperately knocked on the door. "The paparazzi and your fans, I don't know how they found you here. They will be here soon. You should leave quickly." When Hipon heard this, he immediately reached out and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's neck. "You even called the paparazzi?" Wei Wei Bai's eyes were red and she said angrily, "Hipon, what are you crazy about? I don't know what you were talking about. Is this how you humiliate me? I was blind to like you. Do you know how much I regret it? How could I like a man like you who only knows how to ruin me? I'm cheap." Hipon's jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. Wei Wei Bai didn't care. She began to hit him frantically, trying to kick him away. "I don't like you. I don't like you. Don't appear in front of me again. I can't wait to tear up the contract. How could I leak it?" This sentence stung Hipon's eyebrows. "Do you think I can like you for a lifetime without regrets? Now that you're in power, you're suppressing me and ruining my career, forcing me to quit the entertainment industry. You're making me unable to act. Are you happy now?" As Bai Weiwei spoke, tears rolled down her face. Feeling wronged, she broke down and cried, "Why are you so bad? Did I just like you? How can you ruin me like this? I don't like you. I let you go, but you still want to ruin me. What do I owe you?" Hipon saw that she didn't seem to be pretending. He hesitated and said coldly, "Didn't you leak the contract?" Wei Wei Bai cried and said, "If I wanted to leak it, I would have leaked it. What's the benefit of leaking it at this time? So that you can kill me?" Now Wei Wei Bai has been hit by Hipon's revenge and can't get up. Although she had some money, she couldn't compete with Hipon. Hipon said coldly, "Didn't you call the reporters?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him angrily. "Why did I call reporters? To take my nude photos of me? You may be shameless, but I am. If your photos were taken." The door suddenly opened. Hipon's face was very ugly. "Go." Xiaomu immediately ran to the car, but when Hipon was about to get in the car, a group of reporters had already run over. "It's Hipon, we found him. He really appeared in XXX community. This is not where Wei Wei Bai lives." Wei Wei Bai, the retired movie queen, big news. Hipon immediately got in the car and closed the door. His face was gloomy. Damn it. Being targeted by these reporters, he couldn't think of a stable life. Xiaomu was just about to drive when he thought of something. Where is Sister Wei Wei? Once the things between Wei Wei Bai and Hipon were leaked, this place would definitely not be safe. Download. Chapter 107. Hipon said coldly, "Why do we care about that woman? Let's go." Xiaomu could only drive, and the reporters could only give way when they saw the car. The reporters were like dogs that smelled meat. Hipon couldn't be caught, but Wei Wei Bai must still be there. They rushed to Wei Wei Bai's house and were about to knock on the door when they found that the door was not locked. A bold reporter immediately opened the door and saw Wei Wei Bai standing at the door with some messy clothes and messy hair. "You are?" Wei Wei Bai frowned and was about to ask. The reporters frantically picked up the camera and took photos. They also picked up the recording pin. "Wei Wei Bai, someone said that you were keeping Hipon. Is it true?" Wei Wei Bai immediately dodged and said weakly, "What Hipon? I don't know. Is the content of the contract true? Hipon really took tens of millions. Have you been supporting him for the past few years?" Wei Wei Bai immediately shook her head. "I don't know him. I don't welcome you. If you don't leave, I will call the police." After that, Wei Wei Bai was about to close the door, but in the next second, several fans rushed over crazily. "Wei Wei Bai, you slandered our Pone, you bitch." One of the fans took out an egg and threw it at Wei Wei Bai. The reporters were even crazier. They couldn't wait to kill her and then make the news bigger. Wei Wei Bai was scared and stumbled back a few steps. She tripped and fell to the ground. The reporters immediately took photos of her embarrassment. The fans were even more arrogant. "I let you slander our Pone. How could our Pone like you? An ugly monster. Ugly monster. The system trembled, saying that the host was an ugly monster. Wasn't she looking for abuse? Wei Wei Bai's body was full of broken eggshells. She looked up and stared at the fan. Obviously, her eyes seemed fragile, but it made the fan shiver. The fan was furious. She felt that she had been provoked. There were still eggs in her hand. She raised her hand and wanted to throw them out. However, just as he raised his hand, he was grabbed tightly by someone. The force was so strong that the fan screamed in pain. Hipon pushed away the crazy fan and looked up to see Wei Wei Bai fall to the ground, staring blankly at everything in front of her. It was as if the whole world was bullying her. He didn't know why he asked Xiao Mu to come back. If he didn't come back, Wei Wei Bai would have been eaten by these people. Hipon said angrily to her, "Is there something wrong with your brain? Why did you open the door? Didn't she work in the entertainment industry before? Don't you know how scary reporters and die-hard fans are?" When the reporters saw Hipon, they were even more excited. Film Emperor He, is your relationship with Bai Weiwei a relationship of keeping and being kept? What positions do you like in bed? Are your skills really that good? Hipon suddenly bent down and picked up Weiwei Bai. Xiaomu called a few bodyguards and then rushed over to protect them. The reporters didn't give up. They wanted to push away the bodyguards and squeeze in front of Hipon. Hipon was expressionless. He took out a hat and put it on Weiwei Bai. Then he let her bury her face in his chest and walked out. He didn't care about the reporters or the fans. Weiwei Bai's slender body was trembling. Her fingers tightly grasped his clothes, as if he was the only one in the world who could protect her. Hipon only felt that there was something itchy in his heart, but he couldn't say why. Chapter 108. Hipon had been staying in the hotel arranged by the crew. The matter this time was too big, and the matter of their contract was exposed. It caused a bad effect, and all the reporters chased after them desperately. After finally getting rid of the reporters and fans, Hipon took Weiwei Bai to the new hotel. For safety, Hipon simply asked for a room. Weiwei Bai took a shower and put on the new pajamas. She bought a big size, rolled up the trousers and sleeves, and walked out wearing a large-size slipper. Hipon was on the phone. "Delete the post and delete the Weibo, idiot. We have done several public relations crises to reduce the popularity. If it really doesn't work, we can just create another hot topic and suppress this matter." The other side seemed to say something. Hipon frowned. "You mean this matter has already been on the headlines of the major news and can't be suppressed?" He anxiously walked back and forth a few times, and then fiercely said to the phone, "It's too late to delete the post. Start tracking down the person who posted it. Find that villain for me. I want to pinch him to death with one finger." Weiwei Bai, system. If the male lead finds out you posted the post, it is estimated that the scene will be very awkward. Weiwei Bai tried to calm down, and then slowly walked out. Hipon just hung up the phone, and his mood was almost exploding. The shame 5 years ago, he thought he could get over it. The result was now exposed, and he was completely nailed to the pillar of shame for a lifetime. After all, it was that woman's fault. If it weren't for her, how could he have fallen to the point of lying down and being ridiculed? Hipon heard footsteps behind him and fiercely turned back. As a result, he saw Weiwei Bai wearing cute bear-patterned pajamas. Her long hair was draped over her shoulders, and her bright beauty was more soft and lovely. She saw Hipon looking over and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Hipon breathed, and then he said irritably, "What are you doing sneaking around?" Weiwei Bai hesitated, and then asked, "Can you ask your assistant to send some cosmetics over?" She still wanted to put on makeup at this time. She was indeed vain. Hipon sneered. "Why do you want to be beautiful? You don't have any shows to film. Are you planning to appear prettier when you're being chased by the reporters?" Weiwei Bai's eyes flashed with hurt. She lowered her head and hesitated for a few seconds before whispering, "I'm not confident without makeup." Hipon looked at her up and down and found that although the Bai Weiwei without makeup was less gorgeous, she was surprisingly soft without makeup and had a lot less offensive power. In the past, Weiwei Bai looked annoying, but she was too delicate. Hipon felt that she was fake and was no different from the women in the entertainment industry. Now that she had nothing, she looked much more comfortable than before. Hipon coldly snorted. You're just like this. You're ugly even with makeup on. Anyway, you're not as good looking as me. It's natural that you don't have confidence." Wei Wei Bai and the system were speechless. He had never seen such a narcissistic person. Wei Wei Bai bowed her head and looked at her big slippers. She seemed to hesitate. Hipon looked at the top of her head. For this woman, he felt resentful and disgusted. But he didn't know why. When he saw her now, there was an unknown emotion rolling in his heart. Wei Wei Bai suddenly looked up. Her eyes were surprisingly bright. "Let's divorce, Hipon. /" Chapter 109. Hipon looked at her strangely, his fingers stiff for a moment. Wei Wei Bai seemed to finally be relieved. "I know you hate me. I really liked you back then. At that time, I was like the sun in the sky, so I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I fell in love with you at first sight, but I didn't know how to like someone properly." Hipon felt the stiffness penetrate deep into his muscles. He pulled the corners of his mouth unnaturally. "What do you mean?" Wei Wei Bai said seriously, 5 years ago, I was very naive. I liked you and suppressed you just to get you. It was wrong." Hipon smiled strangely. Wrong? This woman insulted him for 5 years and then waited until it was time for him to abandon her. She said first she didn't want him anymore. Wei Wei Bai didn't seem to find something wrong with him. "Now I'm mature and have given up. I should have divorced you long ago, but because of pride, I didn't know how to say it." Hipon looked at her indifferently. "So, when you like me, you suppress me to death, and when you don't like me, you let me go. Am I your dog?" Wei Wei Bai was a little panicked. "I didn't mean that." Hipon stepped closer. "What do you mean?" "Ah, the matter of the contract hasn't been checked yet, and you want to leave? I suspect that you leaked it because you still like me and don't want me to leave you. So you want to announce our relationship to the world so that I can't divorce you." Wei Wei Bai staggered back. He was too strong, step by step, and she could hardly bear his coercion. "I don't like you, Hipon. Really? We'll break off the engagement tomorrow." Wei Wei Bai's words didn't fall, but the angry Hipon pressed her shoulder, and the huge force made her hit the wall. He also pressed forward, his body close to her. Hipon bowed his head. His handsome face made people envious, but there was a kind of twisted irritation flowing. "Wei Wei Bai, say that you don't like me one more time." Wei Wei Bai almost couldn't catch her breath. Her eyelashes trembled, and she said seriously again, "I don't." Hipon bowed his head and kissed her hard. Wei Wei Bai widened her eyes in disbelief. Hipon left her and said gloomily, "Say it again." Wei Wei Bai hesitated and was just about to open her mouth when Hipon bowed his head again. This time, she raised her hand to block him. "Are you crazy?" Wei Wei Bai looked at him in surprise. Hipon looked at her fiercely. "Try to see if what you said is true or false. If you don't like me, then why are you so afraid of me kissing you? Are you afraid of being tempted?" The system was munching on melon seeds. This is the logic of a lunatic. No one would be moved by a pervert's kiss. Wei Wei Bai breathed heavily and finally couldn't bear it. "I will hold a press conference tomorrow. At that time, I will tell you what happened 5 years ago. You are the victim of my suppression. Everyone will sympathize with you, and then I will directly break off the engagement with you." Hipon's movements stopped. If Wei Wei Bai held a press conference, and truthfully speaking about what happened that year, he was indeed the victim. For him, it was not a scandal, but a reversal of the news. It would be easy to gain a bunch of passers-by fans. Hipon looked at her suspiciously. "What tricks are you playing?" Wei Wei Bai's change was too big, so big that he suspected there was a conspiracy. Bai Weiwei's face was a little pale, and her smile was a little sad. "What conspiracy could I have? I'm just making up for my mistakes. After tomorrow's press conference, you can retreat unscathed. You can also completely break this shameful contract, and even more." At the slash to read at https://www.sashu. Comto to read at https://m/sashu. Com collection below to record this reading record. Chapter 110. He could leave her completely. When Hipon heard this, he should have been happy. But he didn't know why. When he saw Wei Wei Bai's half-dead appearance, his heart was blocked. Hipon let go of her and sneered. Then I'll wait and see tomorrow. Let me see what you will say at the press conference. Wei Wei Bai breathed a sigh of relief and put down the hand on her mouth. As a result, Hipon suddenly bowed his head and kissed her fiercely. Wei Wei Bai's heart jumped, and she only felt that the heat on her lips made her scalp numb. Hipon's strong breath completely invaded her field, and she began to tremble. After the kiss, Wei Wei Bai's face flushed, her fingers clenched, and she almost couldn't stand still. Hipon smiled proudly. You see, you're so excited and still say you don't like me. You're just deceiving yourself. His heart was finally not so blocked. Hipon turned and was just about to walk away when his clothes were caught. Wei Wei Bai's hesitant voice came from behind. Tomorrow, you can ask your assistant to help me send a set of cosmetics. Hipon heard her unconfident words and his heart softened. But his mouth didn't spare her. You're ugly no matter how you look. Whatever. I'll ask them to send it tomorrow. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 20. Because there was only one luxurious bed in the room, Hipon said bluntly. You sleep on the sofa. Wei Wei Bai hugged a pillow and was speechless for a moment before sleeping on the sofa. When she was lying on the sofa, she finally couldn't help but pinch the system and say, Where did you find such a crazy target? Although the first two were also ruthless, they weren't so strange. The system also felt that this target's brain circuit was really strange. It coughed twice, randomly selected, unable to choose. Wei Wei Bai was still angry. Am I ugly? Where am I ugly? People who think I'm ugly are people with problems in their brains. Hipon's brain is not clear. The system felt that something was amiss and said, You think he's crazy because he called you ugly? Wei Wei Bai was furious. Nonsense. My beauty is known to the world. You must be sick to say that I'm ugly. System. It originally thought that Hipon was a snake spirit, but it was wrong. In this world, there was no one more sick than the host. After Wei Wei Bai finished scolding the system, she fell asleep. In the middle of the night, she found someone gently carrying her and placing her on the soft bed. Hipon's voice was soft. It's as heavy as 2 pigs. Wei Wei Bai, after Hipon put her beside him, he deliberately slept far away. This woman had been coveting him, and he was afraid that she would take advantage of him. Wei Wei Bai was lying on her side, oblivious. She was sleeping with a gentle expression on her face. Hipon looked at her. Under the dim yellow light, her appearance was gentle and beautiful. After looking at him for a long time, the repulsive look that he used to find was actually much more pleasing to the eye. Hipon couldn't help but touch his lips. His ears were red. When he kissed her, he felt that her lips were like jelly, soft and sweet. His fingers slowly touched Wei Wei Bai's lips. He pulled back like he had been electrocuted. Then he turned his back to her and stared at the small lamp in front of him. What was he doing? Wasn't Wei Wei Bai the kind of woman he hated the most? Tomorrow, he could get rid of her. But this kind of woman, shouldn't she have some follow-up means to keep him? Would she obediently cancel their engagement? She must be lying to him. She wouldn't dare to hold a press conference tomorrow. When it was dawn, Wei Wei Bai got up early, and her assistant brought her clothes and cosmetics. She put on makeup and clothes, bright and moving. Then she did not hesitate to call the reporters. I plan to hold a press conference downstairs at XX Hotel. Come here now. Teed. Chapter 111. Hipon had just woken up when he heard Wei Wei Bai's words. He was a little confused and felt that he must still be dreaming. How could Wei Wei Bai hold a press conference? If she really whitewashed him, she would be completely unable to turn over. He didn't know what kind of mentality he had, but he couldn't wait to see Wei Wei Bai standing on the sofa. She was wearing formal clothes today, a purple high-waisted dress, and her hair was tied into a bun. Because of the beautiful makeup, she looked completely different from yesterday. Yesterday, she was particularly unconfident and even afraid of crowds. But today, she was confident and reserved and beautiful. Hipon suddenly felt a little confused. Did she have this kind of temperament before? Although she was also very cold and arrogant before, she revealed a particularly annoying feeling. But today, she made him completely unable to hate her. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be aware of his gaze. She turned back and revealed a smile. Hipon, I will go down later and tell you what happened 5 years ago. You are the victim from beginning to end. I suppressed you and framed you to cause that contract, so you don't have to worry about your career." She was cold, self-restrained, and didn't care. Hipon saw her like this, and his stomach faintly hurt. He had a problem with his work, and that was stomach pain. Especially when he was nervous, stomach pain. Wei Wei Bai glanced at the time. The press conference should start. "I will go down first." Hipon suddenly opened his mouth. "Do you know what you will suffer if you disclose what happened that year?" Wei Wei Bai's footsteps paused, and after a moment of silence, she turned back and showed a relieved smile. "I know what I will suffer." It was nothing more than being spurned by thousands of people and never being able to appear in public again. "But this is my mistake, so I will end it." Wei Wei Bai's tone was firm, and there was no trace of darkness on her bright face. Hipon reluctantly pulled up the corner of his mouth. "What you say sounds good. Who knows what you will say at the press conference later?" Wei Wei Bai opened the door and said with her back to him, "Don't worry. After this incident, we'll be even. I don't owe you anything anymore." After she finished speaking, she closed the door and left. Hipon was stupefied on the bed. He didn't think that Wei Wei Bai would really go to a press conference. He thought that this woman was lying to him. After all, who would push themselves to eternal damnation? Hipon absent-mindedly got up and stuffed the stomach medicine into his mouth. His stomach finally stopped protesting. He snorted to himself. "Who cares? She's the one who's looking for death." When Xiaomu hurried over, Hipon was watching the live broadcast on his computer. After Wei Wei Bai retired for a few years, the first time she appeared in public was because of her contract with Hipon. Who was Hipon? He was the film emperor. Anything related to him would cause public opinion to explode. The live broadcast of the press conference was carried out. Soon, on the screen, Wei Wei Bai was seen walking calmly. She was not embarrassed at all. Her posture was perfect and elegant. Hypocrite! Hipon bitterly broke the bread that Xiaomu had brought for breakfast. Xiaomu saw Wei Wei Bai tidying up the microphone and seemed to be about to start speaking. He said with some worry, "If Wei Wei's sister tells the truth, she probably won't be able to leave the hotel." Hipon said coldly, "Well, who's to blame for her own death?" // Chapter 112. Xiaomu sighed. "Your fans are here, and go. They will probably keep boycotting Wei Wei's sister." The contract made Hipon's fans go crazy. They all thought that it was Wei Wei Bai who made trouble, so they hated Wei Wei Bai very much. If the press conference started and Wei Wei Bai took the blame, she would probably be eaten by those fans. Hipon pinched the bread. He knew the ability of his fans to make trouble. Although other people's fans were crazy, they were not as strong as his fans. If the fans really thought that Wei Wei Bai harmed him, it was estimated that Wei Wei Bai would be stabbed at the door of the hotel, and this was beyond Hipon's control. Hipon stared at the live broadcast screen with dark eyes. "I don't believe that this woman is really willing to sacrifice herself to wash my name." As soon as his words fell, Wei Wei Bai's voice sounded. "Dear reporter friends, I invited you here this time to clarify the matter of the contract between me and Hipon." As soon as her words fell, Hipon stood up and his face was gloomy. "This woman, damn, is she really going to sacrifice herself?" Wei Wei Bai's words continued. "First of all, I want to tell you that Hipon is innocent." This sentence made Hipon grit his teeth. "Wei Wei Bai, you are stupid." If she really said that she had played tricks to get him, and then used the contract to bind him, she didn't have to go out on the street in the future. Wei Wei Bai faced the reporters and smiled indifferently. "You may think that I am going to say that the contract is fake and photoshopped. No, the contract is real." The reporters were in an uproar. This was really big news. Today's super actor was a duck that was kept by someone in the past. Was there any news more shocking than this? Several reporters rushed forward and wanted to continue to ask questions, but the hotel security was already waiting and stopped them. Wei Wei Bai remained calm in the face of so many people's uproar. She said, "You can ask your questions after I'm done." The reporters could only retreat. After all, Wei Wei Bai couldn't run away. Wei Wei Bai's voice was soft, and her face was filled with tender nostalgia. "I remember the first time I saw him, he was auditioning for a drama. That was his first audition, and he was a little nervous. Hipon was stunned. His first interview? It seemed like he had auditioned for a drama series. At that time, he had almost been rejected, but in the end, he still got that role. It was also that role that made him stand out in the entertainment industry. Wei Weibai said, the role in that movie was decided internally by another celebrity. He was rejected, but I felt that it was a pity, so I instructed him to get that role. Hipon watched the live broadcast, his nails digging into the flesh of his palm. At that time, was she the one who gave him the first role? Wei Weibai smiled faintly. I think I fell in love with him at first sight. The reporters were desperately recording and filming. The comments under the live broadcast also surged. But to Bai Weiwei, all of this seemed to be of no importance. The second time we met, he had already begun to get some small roles. After all, he was good-looking. She said so bluntly that Hipon was good-looking, but she was not infatuated at all. Instead, she was more indifferent. Wei Weibai said, when he was a supporting role for me, he once held my hand. My heart was beating like thunder. That was the first time I realized that when you like someone, your blood can boil. Secret love is the purest feeling in the world. / Chapter 113. Hipon watched the live broadcast. She had a crush on him? Something warm and itchy went along his body and into his heart. He thought for a while before he figured out that it was actually pleasure. Wei Weibai continued, I was immature at that time. I thought that if I loved someone, I should be restrained by his side. But when he really came to me and I saw his unhappy face, I knew I was wrong. Xiaomu watched the live broadcast and couldn't help but sigh. Sister Wei Wei is really whitewashing you. Ngu. Hipon pursed his lips and frowned. He said coldly, I won't be soft-hearted. She's just trying to gain sympathy. Xiaomu hesitated and said, it doesn't seem like it, Ngu. Sister Wei Wei seems to have really given up. Gave up. The pleasure in Hipon's heart dissipated. She gave up. Did she give up her feelings for him? Wei Weibai had some tears in her eyes. She took a deep breath and calmed her somewhat intense emotions. The following words are for him. Please forgive me for being willful. After I finish speaking to him, I will tell him all about the contract. After Wei Weibai finished speaking, she faced the camera. She sat up straight and smiled. Pone, do you know? I collected all your works since your debut. There are newspapers, magazines, books, and your signature, your photos, everything about you. This was done by the original owner. The original owner really liked Hipon, so she collected a lot of his things. Wei Weibai's smile remained unchanged, but there was a trace of sadness between her eyebrows. I know this has troubled you, but please forgive a person who loves you for offending you. I'm like a girl who doesn't know how to grow up. I love you but don't know how to keep you. I did a lot of things that you didn't like, and then in the pain of your rejection, I slowly grew up and my feelings for you faded. When Hipon heard this sentence, he couldn't help but take out a cigarette, lit it, and took a puff. Xiaomu looked at him in surprise. Hipon rarely smoked unless he was particularly irritated. Wei Weibai sighed. I sincerely apologize for the hurt I caused you in the past. You don't have to worry about me pestering you in the future because I don't love you anymore. When Hipon heard Wei Weibai say this sentence, his head felt like it was hit by a hammer. He frowned, and there was a kind of enduring impatience on his face. Little Mu was a little surprised. Brother, and bang. The door was slammed shut. Hipon had already disappeared from the room. Only half of the flattened cigarette was left. After Wei Weibai finished speaking, she looked at the reporters. The system said, Host, I don't know what you're doing. Aren't you just pushing the male lead far away? If Hipon was washed clean, Wei Weibai would have no excuse to approach him in the future. Wei Weibai sneered. You don't understand the heart of a narcissist. Do you know what is the most unbearable thing for a narcissist? The system was confused. Wei Weibai said firmly, Only I can dump people. No one dares to dump me. In the world, I am the most beautiful, the best, the most arrogant, the most unique. If anyone dares to say that they don't love me, I will kill them. System. Why does the host understand the mentality of a narcissist so well? Wei Weibai said, You think I made a scandal just for Hipon to come to me? You are too sweet. I want to use the scandal to announce to the world that I don't love Hipon anymore. Wei Wei Bai looked at the reporters and calmly said, the contract is not a kept contract. I married her. This sentence was earth-shattering and shocking. Wasn't it kept? How could it be married? Everyone looked back and saw Hipon standing there. His eyebrows were delicate and he was arrogant. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 25. Full text //. Download. T. Chapter 114. Hipon acted as if he didn't see the chaotic reporters at the scene. In his eyes, there was only Wei Wei Bai. She sat there, her face full of astonishment and confusion, but there was no surprise. Hipon only felt his heart sink. He walked over step by step, and several reporters immediately came up. Hipon, you, Hipon simply said. Get lost? He was famous in the industry for acting like a big shot, and his fans also condoned it, because this arrogance brought out his handsomeness, which made him unique in the entertainment industry, and no one could imitate him. The reporters flinched and retreated. Hipon walked to Wei Wei Bai's side. There were no extra chairs, but he didn't care. He directly bent down and pulled the microphone in front of Wei Wei Bai and said to everyone at the scene, that contract is just a misunderstanding. When I was in need of money, she lent me the money. The contract is just an IOU. In fact, the contract that Wei Wei Bai shot and uploaded was covered up in many places, but the number of tens of millions and his autograph were more conspicuous. So when Hipon said this, it was impossible to refute. Wei Wei Bai was surprised and wanted to stand up, but Hipon held her shoulder with one hand. His strength seemed not to be big, but he pressed her to the seat. His eyes were cold, and his tone was strong and calm. As for why she was willing to lend me tens of millions, it was because the two of us were about to get married. It's not a strange thing for a fiancée to lend money to her future husband. System eating melon eating. Just watch the male lead talk nonsense with a straight face. Hipon's aura was strong, and his every move had an oppressive momentum. The scene was very quiet. He said coldly, at that time, I was not famous, so after I married her, the two of us chose to hide our marriage. Hidden marriages were not uncommon in the entertainment industry. Many idols and stars chose to hide their marriage for their career. The contract issue that broke out today affected me very much. Wei Wei was worried that my future would be damaged, so she chose to hide the fact that she married me and intended to take the contract issue into her own hands. The reporters and fans were stunned. Although they really wanted big news, when the news was so big that it was terrifying, everyone fell silent for a moment. Hipon stood behind Wei Wei Bai. His figure was slender and fit, like a protector. His eyes were cold and his expression was indifferent, but everyone could hear the protectiveness in his tone. She and I have always been husband and wife. It has been 5 years. Hipon looked at everyone present. So, put away your dirty words and imagination. I now officially tell everyone that Wei Wei Bai and I are husband and wife, not a mistress. The reporters were crazy. The live stream exploded. The fans were stunned. After the system finished eating the melon, it began to clean up the melon rind. Hipon glanced at the people below with a blank expression. I'm done. There is no question and answer session. The rest is up to you. After that, he threw the microphone in his hand behind him. Wei Wei Bai's body was so stiff that it was terrible. Hipon's fingers pressed on her shoulders, and he could even feel her tense muscles trembling. Her eyes were red as she looked up at Hipon. Then, her eyes flashed with the determination to stake everything on one throw. She pushed away Hipon's hand and was about to say, no. The next second, Hipon reached out and wrapped his arms around her slender waist, pulling her into his arms. His other hand pressed against the back of her head, and his lips did not hesitate to press down on her restless mouth. //T. Chapter 115. This kiss was so strong that it was impossible to escape. Several fans at the scene screamed uncontrollably. Hipon sealed the words in her mouth and took away her soft and sweet breath. Bai Weiwei was forcefully suppressed by him and didn't even have a chance to resist. After a long time, Hipon finally let go of her. He turned his back to everyone and slowly showed a proud smile, whispering, "You want to dump me? You don't want to owe me? Dream on. Only he didn't want people who dared not want him, didn't love him? Was he the kind of cheap goods that could be loved as and when people said they loved him? Wei Wei Bai's pale face was stained with a trace of red. She was a little overwhelmed, and her indifferent eyes revealed a confused mood. She looked like she was completely confused by Hipon and didn't know what this man wanted to do. Hipon saw Wei Wei Bai like this and finally felt like he had control of her again. He didn't know until today that he hated her indifferent and calm look. Hipon took Wei Wei Bai's hand and walked out directly. The fans cried and shouted, "Pon, Pon." They looked sad and angry. Hipon turned back, put his finger to his lips and said coldly, "Shut up. Go home and wait for me to post on Weibo." The fans were immediately stunned and didn't know where they were. The reporters weren't shocked and they swarmed up and were just about to ask something. The fans had already started to drive people away. "Get out. Didn't you hear our Pon say he's leaving? The press conference is over. Don't bother Pon." The reporter vomited blood. "He's married. Why are you fans of him?" The fans said in unison, "He's married and can't get divorced. You're worried about nothing." Hipon's fans had always been so strange and tough. The entertainment industry's only fan support group made Hipon arrogant to walk sideways. They couldn't stay in the hotel. Hipon said bluntly, "Go home." Of course, he didn't go back to Wei Wei Bai's house. The location of her house had been exposed, so Hipon went back to his own apartment. The houses that he had bought over the past few years were worth more than enough to make him rich. One of his apartments was in the center of the city. It was a luxurious penthouse with an outdoor swimming pool and a gym. Hipon spent a lot of money, but he himself was a money tree, so he didn't care about the money. With just a phone call, he sent over all the things that belonged to Wei Wei Bai's original residence. Then he opened his Weibo and wrote, "I'm going home with my wife. Although the news is surprising, I don't think I've done anyone wrong. The only thing I'm sorry about is my fans. I know I made you sad, but I don't regret exposing this matter because I know your love for me isn't so shallow. The person I love is also the person you love. The one I love, she is also the one you love." This sentence caused all the fans to collectively climax. Fan number 1. Werwu, Bobo, I'm sorry. It's all our fault. We will love you. It's just a marriage. Even if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mistresses, we will still support you. Fan number 2. So moved, so moved. Our Bobo is really the most affectionate, the most beautiful, and the most unique. Fan number 3. It's just a marriage. Why do you have to hide it? Isn't this wronging yourself? If you had said earlier, we wouldn't have blamed you. Chapter 116. Anti-fans. I originally wanted to say something bad, but when I saw Wei Wei Bai sacrificing herself to protect Hipon, I felt moved. Fan number 4. I agree with the person above. I'm moved too. Number 5. Love your refill, refill, refill. A passerby. Ah. Number 6. My Bobo is still so handsome even though he's married. The system passed by silently. A bunch of lunatics. Hipon's Weibo successfully passed the public relations crisis. Then, he finally couldn't take it anymore. He threw the phone away and covered his stomach with his hand. His face turned pale. Damn it, my stomach is acting up again. His gastric problem was the aftereffect of working day and night for the past few years. Originally, he had almost fully recovered, but once he was overly anxious, he would act up. Today's events caused his illness to erupt completely. Although he seemed to have suppressed everything before he succeeded, he was walking on a tightrope and could fall off the cliff at any time. The entertainment industry was a very cruel place. Once one fell, it was almost impossible to climb back to the top. Wei Wei Bai was suppressed by him. After a few years, almost no one remembered her. Hipon endured the stomach pain and suddenly thought of something. He picked up his phone and rushed to Wei Wei Bai. Smile sweetly. Wei Wei Bai was confused. What do you want to do? Hipon snorted. Clean up the mess. He sat down beside her and said, Lean on my shoulder. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a moment before obediently leaning on his shoulder. Her hair was close to his cheek, and the fresh breath made Hipon tremble. Hipon endured the pain in his stomach and revealed a calm smile. His eyes were full of affection. "Smile," he ordered. Wei Wei Bai instinctively revealed a sweet smile. Hipon immediately pressed the button on his, took this photo, and then directly posted it on Weibo. Then, he wrote, "I have spent 5 years with her. I still love her deeply and have no regrets." Wei Wei Bai was speechless for a moment, then she silently knocked on the system. "Fuck, Hipon, this guy is better than me. I'm under a lot of pressure." The system said, "Don't worry, you're the best at acting. Kill him, I have faith in you." Wei Wei Bai nodded and accepted the system's encouragement. After Hipon posted on Weibo, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He casually threw away his phone and immediately pressed down on Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. "Hipon, what do you want to do?" After she finished speaking, she realized that something was wrong. Hipon's face was extremely ugly. He bent over and covered his stomach with his hand, as if he was suffering a great ordeal. He had difficulty breathing. "The medicine is in the cabinet in the living room. Help me get it." Wei Wei Bai was a little frightened, and her reaction was a little slow. Hipon seemed to have misunderstood. He showed a pale smile. "Why? You really don't love me anymore? So you want me to die from the pain? You're still joking at this time." Wei Wei Bai finally realized what was wrong with him. She immediately got up and ran to the living room to look for the medicine. Hipon trembled in pain and looked at Wei Wei Bai's back in a daze. His mood was better. She said that she didn't care about him and didn't love him. Women were animals who didn't mean what they said. She didn't love him. He didn't believe it. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 30. Chapter 117. Wei Wei Bai found the stomach medicine and immediately poured warm water to Hipon. Hipon was in so much pain that he was about to lose consciousness. He felt like his stomach was being stirred by a knife. It was so painful that his eyes turned black and his head was confused. Bai Wei Wei touched his head, which was covered in cold sweat. "Pon, take some medicine." Wei Wei Bai touched his face and tried to put the medicine into his mouth. He gritted his teeth and his face turned blue. The medicine couldn't be put in at all. Wei Wei Bai was a little anxious. She tried to open his mouth, but he shivered and didn't open his mouth at all. Wei Wei Bai wanted to call an ambulance. Hipon seemed to know what she was going to do. He endured the pain and reached out to hold her. "Medicine. Give it to me. You can't go to the hospital." Wei Wei Bai quickly turned back, reached out and hugged him. She stuffed the medicine into his mouth and then gave him water. Hipon had exhausted his strength to say those words. He even lost the strength to swallow water. The medicine was in his mouth, but he still couldn't swallow it. Suddenly, his lips were warm. Wei Wei Bai kissed him and poured a mouthful of water into his mouth, forcing him to swallow. Hipon's eyelashes trembled, and he struggled to open his eyes. He saw Wei Wei Bai's eyes full of worry. He rested his head on her thighs, and his hands were still tightly grasping her clothes. This posture was very much like an insecure boy looking for a warm place to stay. Hipon remembered that there were times when he had stomach pain. Those days, he would go find the medicine by himself, and then endure the pain alone until the medicine took effect. The feeling was not very good, but it was even worse to be seen in a distressed state. So he would rather endure alone than let others see his distressed side. But when Wei Wei Bai hugged him, he felt very strange and didn't want to avoid it. Suddenly, he was pushed back to the sofa by Wei Wei Bai, and then she turned and walked away. Hipon frowned. His face was pale, and he wanted to struggle. His fingers couldn't help but want to grab her again. But she walked too fast, and he couldn't catch anything. When Wei Wei Bai came back, she saw Hipon's face full of despair. Was it really that painful? Then she saw Hipon's eyes shining as he stared at her. She had the illusion that she was being stared at by a vicious dog. Wei Wei Bai reached out and unbuttoned his clothes. Then, she put the hot towel on him. Hipon trembled. She thought he was in pain and immediately reached out to touch his hair, as if to comfort him. "It won't hurt anymore. Bear with it." Wei Wei Bai was serious and gentle. She pressed her hand on his abdomen. The heat of the hot towel could have a therapeutic effect. In the past, when she was sick, a hot compress often worked. The effect of the drug made his stomach no longer feel the sharp pain. Hipon didn't know why, but he didn't push her away. Instead, he pretended that he couldn't get up and lay weakly on the sofa, enjoying the touch of her fingers. Wei Wei Bai whispered, "It doesn't hurt anymore. It won't hurt anymore." Hipon's face slowly improved. He began to feel comfortable. He was too tired these days. With Wei Wei Bai's gentle voice, he fell asleep. This sleep was particularly comfortable. When he woke up, he found that he was still lying on the sofa, covered with a quilt. "Where is Wei Wei Bai?" Hipon immediately jumped up, feeling a little anxious. He suddenly heard a sound coming from the kitchen. His heart was happy, and he immediately rushed to the kitchen. This woman actually cooked for him. She said that she didn't love him so firmly, but in the blink of an eye, she still couldn't let him go. He walked into the kitchen and was about to raise a triumphant smile. "Ngu, you're awake?" Xiao Mu, a 1'9" strong man, was wearing an apron. He was holding a pot and smiled at him like a good wife. Chapter 118. Hipon's face turned black. "How come it's you?" Xiaomu smiled brightly. "Sister Weiwei asked me to come. She said you were too tired and asked me to cook some millet porridge for you to nourish your stomach." Hipon looked around. "Where is she?" Xiaomu put the pot on the table and said, "Sister Weiwei said she was leaving." Hipon felt like he was still asleep. "Leaving? Where is she going?" Xiaomu filled the porridge. "She said that things are too big and she wants to go abroad to avoid the limelight." Hipon felt that the surroundings were quiet and his whole person was a little confused. He said slowly, "She's going abroad?" Xiaomu nodded. "Yes, when I came in this morning, I saw Sister Weiwei packing her luggage. I helped her pack it. By the way, she said that there was something on the table in the living room for you." Hipon smiled angrily. "Oh, something for me?" Xiaomu immediately smiled. "I didn't peek. Maybe it's a love letter or something." Hipon saw Xiaomu smile and felt that his brain was going to explode. He immediately rushed to the living room and saw that there was indeed a big envelope on the table. He picked it up and opened it. There was the divorce agreement and the original marriage certificate of the two of them. Was he asking him to get a divorce by himself? Hipon tore the divorce agreement in his hand, stuffed the marriage certificate into his pocket, and then rushed to the kitchen. Which foreign country is she going to? More than 200 foreign countries. Which one is it? Xiaomu was frightened by Hipon's terrible eyes. It seems to be the United States. Her flight was at 10 this morning. Hipon grinned at him. "Very good. If I can't get her back, I will put you in the toilet and flush the toilet 100 times. After that, Hipon immediately rushed out of the door. He angrily rushed to the airport. "Wei Wei Bai, you dare to divorce me? I am such a perfect man. You didn't hold my thigh and beg me not to leave, but you dare to give me the divorce agreement?" Airport lobby. Wei Wei Bai held the makeup mirror and looked at her own face with melancholy. "Everyone, this face can't be compared to the previous one, although it was also beautiful. But in the previous plane, she was a stunning beauty. Beauty and peerless beauty were two different things. The system was expressionless. What's the difference? Isn't it just a combination of two mung bean eyes, a long nose, and a pair of sausage lips? Wei Wei Bai serves this system right for being single. Wei Wei Bai looked at the time and felt that it was about time, so she anonymously sent a message to the reporters. The system looked at it curiously. "What are you sending?" "Wei Wei Bai, Hipon is at the airport." The system looked around. "Where? Why didn't it see Hipon?" Wei Wei Bai sneered. "Hipon can't wait for all the men and women in the world to chase after him. If he sees me running away, he will definitely chase after me. I'll wake him up and let him know what it means to let him do as he pleases. I won't serve him." System. What an unrhyming poem. When Hipon arrived at the airport, it was not yet 10 o'clock. He was surrounded by people and couldn't find Wei Wei Bai at all. Could it be that she entered the departure hall? Hipon was anxious. He didn't even realize that he wasn't angry, but anxious. He suddenly saw a familiar figure. Was it Wei Wei Bai? He immediately rushed over and grabbed her. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that it was a strange woman. Hipon's face was gloomy, and he immediately let go of her. Regardless of other people's strange eyes, he turned around and looked for her. /T Chapter 119. Searching and searching, he felt like a headless fly. Suddenly, he paused. Damn, what am I looking for? Isn't it better that Wei Wei Bai is gone? Isn't he eager to get rid of her as soon as possible? What's wrong with him looking for her? Hipon pulled the scarf covering his face and thought viciously, it's better that she's gone. Anyway, I hate her. He turned around and was about to leave when he saw Wei Wei Bai pulling her luggage and walking towards the entrance of the departure hall. At this moment, his brain exploded like fireworks, as if there was a fierce electric current flowing through his body. He finally found her. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 35. Wei Wei Bai heard the familiar reminder and couldn't help but look up. She saw Hipon wearing sunglasses and most of his face was wrapped in a scarf. He rushed towards her like he was on fire. Before she could react, her passport, plane ticket, and everything else were snatched away from her. Hipon directly tore her ticket and stuffed her passport into his pocket, then reached out and grabbed her fingers. Just like catching an escaped prisoner, he couldn't wait to take out handcuffs and lock her up. Wei Wei Bai saw that her ticket was torn and couldn't help but get angry. What are you doing? Hipon righteously said, I'm taking you back. Wei Wei Bai felt a headache. She tried to explain, I have to go abroad. Our matter is too big, and I have already promised you a divorce. I will let you go. Hipon coldly snorted, fake kindness. Let me go? Do you know what situation I am in now? To prevent you from becoming a target of scorn, I sacrificed myself and tried my best to save your public image. In the end, you just walked away. Wei Wei Bai struggled with some excitement. Let me go, Hipon. Hipon's eyes were red with anger. Now I have the final say. Come back with me. Wei Wei Bai was unmoved and looked at him coldly. When the two people were wrestling, reporters suddenly rushed in from the airport entrance. Where is Hipon? I see him. I've studied him for so long. I can recognize him even if he turns into a woman. He's over there. Hipon's attention was attracted by Wei Wei Bai. He lost his vigilance and was surrounded by reporters. The reporters shoved microphones, recording pins, and autograph papers in front of him, as if they wanted to stuff them into his mouth. Movie King He, are you trying to change your mind about your marriage? Movie King He, are you and Wei Wei Bai trying to get married? Mr. He, my sister wants me to ask for your autograph. Hipon's gloomy face turned into a spring breeze. He smiled and hugged Wei Wei Bai. Hello, are you here to send us off? The reporters were confused. Hipon was extremely gentle. My baby and I are preparing to go on our 10th honeymoon trip. Wei Wei Bai and the system, I can't compare to you in terms of the speed at which you change your face. When the reporters heard that it was a honeymoon trip, they felt that it was okay. After all, the movie King's honeymoon trip was a good news headline. Hipon was very familiar with them. He also greeted the fans who found him, and then pulled Wei Wei Bai to the entrance of the departure hall. They didn't have tickets and couldn't get in. As a result, Hipon said something to the airport staff and went directly through the VIP channel. He turned a corner and walked out of the airport. He stuffed Wei Wei Bai into his car and was just about to drive. Wei Wei Bai was already cold. Hipon, that's enough. The fake smile on Hipon's face disappeared. He sneered, you're the one who's enough. Wei Wei Bai, do you want to attract my attention? Wei Wei Bai's face was pale. She looked at him blankly. Suddenly, the tears in her eyes couldn't be held back anymore. She looked at him with tears flowing down her face. Looking at him, his heart was in chaos. Teethy. Chapter 120. Wei Wei Bai reached out and wiped her tears, then tried to maintain a calm tone and said, Hipon, don't play with me. I admit that I lost. I can't afford to play with you. Hipon reached out and grasped the steering wheel. I played with you? Didn't you get tired of playing with me and then kick me away? In the beginning, she forced him to marry for less than 5 years. Well, he hadn't kicked her away yet, but this woman took the initiative to leave. This made Hipon's breath choke. He wanted to kill someone. Wei Wei Bai had recovered her calmness. She turned her face and looked out of the window. If you say you're tired of playing with me, then I don't want to stay with you. Hipon felt that Wei Wei must have done it on purpose. Every sentence poked at his explosive point. He immediately drove and stepped hard on the accelerator. You say you want to leave? Now the news has changed to I love you. The contract has damaged my image. If you let this secret marriage become a divorce, my future will be over. You can't be thinking of this idea. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips and said indifferently, I didn't expect you to come out and say that we are in a secret marriage. You also posted on Weibo that we are very sweet. Hipon was choked by her and became angry. I'm willing. Wei Wei Bai, I'm also willing to leave. Hipon suddenly stopped the car. Get out of the car. Wei Wei Bai looked up. Civil Affairs Bureau? Hipon took out the marriage certificate. If you really want to leave, just go in with me and get the divorce done. He felt that Wei Wei Bai must be playing hard to get. Otherwise, she wouldn't let him go before. But now she said she wanted to leave. How could anyone be so free and easy? Wei Wei Bai saw the marriage certificate in his hand, and a touch of sadness appeared on her face. Then she reached out and grabbed one of the marriage certificates in his hand, opened the door and went out. Okay, let's divorce. Hipon was stunned and began to panic. The remaining marriage certificate in his hand suddenly felt hot, but seeing Wei Wei Bai's cold face, he also opened the door and got out of the car. He said coldly, let's get a divorce then. Hipon wrapped his face with a scarf and followed Wei Wei Bai into the Civil Affairs Bureau. Hipon's face was dark as he sat in a chair with Wei Wei Bai and waited. In one of the couples, the woman kept crying. I've loved you for so long, but you've never looked back at me. I told myself that if I still can't make you love me after 10 years, then I won't love you anymore. The man said, aren't we living well? The woman said, you don't love me. The man said, you can live on even if you don't love her. You're just looking for trouble. The woman finally couldn't take it anymore. She stood up and slapped him. Do you think I can love you for the rest of my life? If you love someone and don't get a response, your love will disappear. I have loved you for 10 years, not 10 days. Let me tell you, I don't love you anymore. If I don't love you, I won't divorce you. I'm not that cheap. If love is not reciprocated, love will disappear. When Hipon heard these words, the emotions in his heart were tumbling. Uncomfortable and uneasy? Love will disappear? Could it be that Wei Wei Bai's love for him had disappeared? Hipon suddenly wasn't sure whether it was right or wrong to pull her to the Civil Affairs Bureau and scare her into divorce. What if Wei Wei Bai wasn't playing hard to get? Hipon waited patiently. Maybe she would find an excuse not to divorce him later. But when everyone was divorced and only the two of them were left, Wei Wei Bai still didn't say that she wanted to leave. Chapter 121. Wei Wei Bai suddenly stood up. Well, it's our turn. Hipon looked at her strangely. Don't you have anything to say? For example, going to the bathroom, having a stomachache, suddenly having a period, or other excuses, and then leaving. Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely. No, let's go in. Hipon slowly got up and slowly walked step by step, just like a snail. Wei Wei Bai patiently waited for him, seemingly waiting for him to walk for a few hours. Hipon walked halfway and found that Wei Wei Bai's face was serious. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but he suddenly turned around and walked away. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in surprise and then followed him. Aren't you going to divorce? Hipon said coldly, I'm hungry. Wei Wei Bai quickly said, now the divorce procedure is very simple, it's very fast. You can go eat after we divorce. Hipon walked quickly and snorted, I'm hungry, I don't want to do anything. They had already rushed out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Wei Wei Bai suddenly broke out. She reached out and grabbed Hipon. What are you doing? Hipon, can't you be normal? Hipon didn't look at her, his eyes slightly trembling, but his tone was still tough. When I'm normal, I do what I want to do. Wei Wei Bai's face was a lot of decadence. She suddenly let go of him and then staggered back 2 steps. Did you hear it just now? Hipon frowned. What did I hear? Wei Wei Bai chuckled, but there was no smile in her eyes. Love will disappear. Hipon? Hipon's heart was blocked. Wei Wei Bai continued, I don't have such good patience. That woman can love a person for 10 years without asking for a response. I can't. 5 years is my limit. Hipon wanted to pull out a sneer and say that he didn't care, but he didn't know why. He couldn't pull out a smile. Wei Wei Bai's smile faded. Do you know? I wait for a person's response day and night. Other than watching your videos and photos, I don't get any feedback at all. No matter how passionate the love was, it would disappear eventually. I forced you and hurt you, but I really did love you. Loved, pass. Hipon's hands clenched into fists, and suddenly his breathing became somewhat sluggish. Wei Wei Bai's voice was light, but when it fell into Hipon's ears, it was heavy enough to crush him. I really don't have any thoughts about you now, and I can't like you anymore. Wei Wei Bai endured the sadness in her heart. Can you not appear in front of me again? I'm too tired. Just looking at you makes me suffer. Can you just let me go? You clearly don't like me, so why are you still holding on to me? One question after another, but Hipon felt so sad that he wanted to avoid it. Wei Wei Bai turned around, tears rolling down her cheeks. Do you know how cruel you are? You're making me think there's still hope. I haven't loved you for the next 5 years. Don't show a trace of caring about me when you don't love me. I'm afraid that I'll rekindle my love for you. Hipon opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything. Wei Wei Bai said, if you don't like me, then don't care about me. After that, Wei Wei Bai immediately left. Hipon didn't chase after her. He just stood there, as if he was hit. Wei Wei Bai walked around the corner, then leaned against the wall with a sad face. The system was silent and wanted to comfort her. Suddenly, it heard her say, 3, 2, 1. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 50. Wei Wei Bai coldly snorted. Little guy, see if I can't deal with you. To read the ad, https://www.sashu.com/ to read at https://www.sashu.com/txt to read at https://m.sashu.com. Chapter 122. System. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? How did the favorability increase? It silently took out the calculator. It had to calculate whether the system had made a mistake, so the favorability reminder was also wrong. Wei Wei Bai said, narcissism is a disease. It has to be treated. If I didn't use the medicine, Hipon, this guy, would think that I really loved him until death. The system modestly held the calculator and asked, so, how did the favorability increase in the end? Wei Wei Bai looked proud. So, of course, I slapped him hard and told him that I don't like him anymore. He will wake up from his narcissistic arrogance and know that if he doesn't cherish me, then I will leave. People are all bitches. What is easily obtained will never be cherished and will not be considered precious. So, if you slap Hipon to wake him up, he will be anxious, and when he is anxious, the favorability will definitely increase. The system praised. The host is very knowledgeable. Bai Wei Wei smiled smugly and was about to say she didn't dare. System. It seems that you are also a senior narcissist. Wei Wei Bai. Hipon saw that Wei Wei Bai was gone and stood there in a daze. He seemed to have been suddenly awakened. His brain was buzzing, and there was only one thought. It turned out that Wei Wei Bai really didn't like him anymore. He took a few steps forward and wanted to chase after her, but he felt that he would lose face. If she didn't like him, then she didn't like him. Hipon stood there for a while before he found that Wei Wei Bai was really gone. She didn't look back at him, nor did she deliberately come back to get close to him. He didn't know what was wrong with him. His heart was so flustered that he felt uncomfortable. Even his stomach began to ache faintly. When he returned to the apartment, Xiaomu was still there. He was packing up Wei Wei Bai's things. He asked people to bring Wei Wei Bai's things. Wei Wei Bai just packed some essentials before leaving. The rest was piled up in the guest room. Xiaomu was almost done packing. When he saw Hipon coming back, he immediately smiled and said, "Ngu, look, this is your first year of debut collection. Now it can't be found. Sister Wei Wei actually hid it." Hipon looked at Xiaomu sluggishly and then looked at the collection in his hand. Xiaomu thought that he was interested in these things and immediately moved several large boxes out. "Look, brethren, Sister Wei Wei has collected a lot of your things." Hipon saw these boxes, hesitated, then squatted and reached out to open them. There were photos of him on variety shows, at the airport, and on the streets. There was also his autographed picture. Another box was his information collection. Was clipped from newspapers, magazines, and other newspapers, pasted and pasted. And around him, there were posters, cups with his face printed on them, and so on. Hipon opened those things and looked at them little by little. Xiaomu was still saying excitedly, "Sister Wei Wei is simply your little fangirl. She should be chasing after a star, brother, and she? No, she was chasing love. Then she couldn't catch up, so she left." Hipon held his old posters in his hand and asked Xiaomu, "She didn't say that these things should be taken away?" Xiaomu said, "No, Sister Wei Wei said that these things can be dealt with casually." Hipon looked at Xiaomu like he was a fool. Wei Wei Bai's words made it clear that she didn't want these things. Didn't she want them to throw them in the trash can? Xiaomu asked, "By the way, where is Sister Wei Wei? Is she abroad?" Chapter 123. Hipon held back for a long time. No? Xiaomu wondered. Didn't catch the plane? When will she come back? For the first time, Hipon didn't know how to answer. She won't come back. He thought that he had said those words casually. But Xiaomu looked at him in surprise. Hipon looked like he was about to cry. Hipon also knew that he was out of control. He looked down at the things that were thrown away by Wei Wei Bai. It was as if it was not the things that were thrown away, but him. The grievances came up. Hipon reached out and rubbed his face. His eyes were a little red, and his tone was disdainful. "If you don't want it, then don't. Throw these things in the trash can for me." Xiaomu was shocked, and goo. "It takes a lot of time to collect these, and these are Wei Wei sisters." Hipon was angry. "I told you to throw them away. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Are you her assistant, or my assistant?" Xiaomu was yelled at by him, and had to throw them away pitifully. Hipon saw that the big boxes were thrown away and lay on the sofa with a sigh of relief, looking at the ceiling. Anyway, she won't come back. Anyway, she doesn't like him. Then throw them all away. Hipon tried to ignore the anxiety and discomfort in his heart, but he couldn't calm down. Xiaomu came back and go. "The things have been thrown away. I'll go back first." Hipon coldly snorted. "If you want to get out, get out. I'll rest for a few days. You let the director film the progress of others first." Xiaomu nodded. "Okay." Hipon was a well-known workaholic. His work progress was much faster than others, so even if he took a break for a while, it wouldn't affect anything. After Xiaomu left, the surroundings were empty again. Hipon felt that he was going crazy. He got up and poured a glass of wine. He still couldn't calm down his uncomfortable mood. He paced back and forth in the living room. In the end, he felt like he was in a daze. Suddenly, he glanced at the time and found that the garbage truck was coming. Hipon was anxious. Looking at the time ticking by, he suddenly rushed out of the apartment and into the elevator. Amidst the slow and torturous elevator, he finally reached the first floor. The garbage was collected and disposed of in an open space outside the building. Hipon saw that the garbage dump had started to move. He rushed over. "Put down the trash in your hand." When the worker in charge of disposing of the garbage saw a handsome man in slippers and home clothes, he rushed over and took away the garbage in his hand. Then, he watched as this strange man began to rummage through the trash. Garbage bags were opened one by one. Hipon went crazy and finally pulled out the things that Wei Wei Bai collected from the garbage. Then one box after another was moved out. He glared at the person carrying the garbage and said, "Don't move." The other party was so scared that he was trembling. He was handsome, but it was useless even if his brain wasn't clear. How could he hug trash like he was hugging a treasure and laugh so terrifyingly? Hipon asked the guard to move the things back to his apartment. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he found that his stomach was acting up again. Sure enough, it was the disaster of drinking and losing control of his emotions. His stomach, which had not acted up for a long time, actually acted up twice in a row. Hipon frowned, but there was a thought in his heart. He was not angry, but happy, and immediately called Wei Wei Bai. Beep, she did not answer. Slash. Chapter 124. Hipon looked at the phone pitifully, then gritted his teeth and tried to call again. He didn't answer. Hit again, 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 hit. Wei Wei Bai couldn't bear it and finally connected. Hepone, you're so annoying. Hepone was silent for a while, then said awkwardly, my stomach hurts. Wei Wei Bai said without any hesitation, what about Xiao Mu? Hepone lied without blinking. He went out this morning and fell. He broke his leg and is lying in the hospital. Wei Wei Bai didn't feel soft at all. Oh, then take the medicine. You can pour the water by yourself. Hepone immediately breathed intermittently. I'm in pain. I can't get up. Wei Wei Bai said coldly, then you can swallow it. So cold. So cruel. Hepone felt that he was crazy. Why did he call her when his stomach hurt? He got angry. I can't get up and I can't get the medicine. I'll just die from the pain. After that, he hung up the phone fiercely. Then he lay on the sofa and looked up stupidly. His stomach cramped, but he didn't feel it at all, because he felt that his chest was tighter and the pain was worse. Hepone curled up angrily. If she didn't come, he didn't care. The door of the apartment suddenly opened. Hepone suddenly turned around, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Wei Wei Bai came? And go. What's wrong with you? Xiaomu came in with a bag of supermarket food. The surprise in Hepone's eyes dimmed, and he turned his head. Nothing. Xiaomu went to the kitchen, put the food in the refrigerator, and then came out and said, I seem to have seen Wei Wei's sister. Hepone's ears immediately stood up. Where did you see her? Xiaomu. When I came up, I saw Wei Wei's sister coming here by taxi, but I just pressed the elevator and didn't have time to say hello to her. Hepone immediately sat up. He used too much force and pulled his stomach, making his face pale. Xiaomu became anxious. Brethren, is your stomach acting up? Hepone pushed him away and immediately said, Get out of here quickly. Little Mu was dumbfounded. Where are you going? I haven't cooked for you yet. Hepone's expression was both painful and joyful. Go to the hospital and tell the doctor that you need treatment for your broken leg. Little Mu lowered his head and looked at his leg. It was fine. Where was it broken? Hepone was afraid that his lie would be exposed and said fiercely, If you don't go, I will break your legs. Little Mu's legs trembled, and he immediately left. Hepone didn't forget to remind her. Remember to take the stairs. Little Mu felt that it was not his leg that was broken, but Brother An's brain. Cough, cough. After Xiaomu left, Hepone immediately lay back on the sofa. His stomach was getting more and more painful, but he was getting more and more excited. She still came to see him. Hepone couldn't wait to laugh out loud, but soon his face turned ugly. What was he looking forward to? It was as if he couldn't wait for her to come. Hepone pursed his lips and thought about the plays he had acted in. The more tragic it was, the more he thought about it. Thinking about it, his eyes showed sadness, coupled with the pale face caused by the stomach pain. He looked like he was going to die. Wei Wei Bai knocked on the door, but no one opened it. She tried to open the door, but the door was not locked. She went in and saw Hepone curled up on the sofa. His hair was messy, and his face was miserable. He looked like he was going to die from the pain. //T. Chapter 125. Wei Wei Bai immediately walked over and saw that his forehead was sweating. His muscles were twitching, and his mouth was crying out in pain. He looked like he was delirious. Hepone. Wei Wei Bai reached out and touched his face, which was covered in cold sweat. She frowned and immediately ran to get the medicine and warm water. Then she reached out and held his head, trying to feed him the medicine. Hepone didn't appreciate it. He shivered and said, Pain. I'm in pain. Wei Wei Bai looked reluctant. She sighed. Do you have to be like this? I can't leave? Hepone seemed to have just found out who the person was. He gritted his teeth and said, Didn't you leave? I don't want you to care. The softness in Wei Wei Bai's eyes broke little by little. She was silent for 2 seconds, then she let go of him and turned to leave. Hepone was stunned. His heart panicked. He immediately reached out and grabbed her clothes. Wei Wei Bai didn't look back. Let go. I'm leaving. Hepone felt uncomfortable. Why didn't she coax him? His stomach hurt. His fingers were more forceful. Although his tone was still tough, there was a trace of imperceptible pleading. Don't go. Wei Wei Bai hesitated. She seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, her body relaxed and she finally turned back. Then she turned back, bent over and handed the medicine to his mouth. Take the medicine. Hipon immediately stuck out his tongue and rolled the medicine in her palm. The warm contact made the two people tremble at the same time. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 55. Wei Wei Bai's face was stained with a few traces of red. She fed him the water, then brought a blanket and covered him. You rest. Wei Wei Bai whispered. Are you leaving? Hipon asked anxiously. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a few seconds, then said, I'll leave later. Hipon was relieved and barely maintained a look of indifference. As long as you want, you can stay as long as you want. The medicine took effect, and Hipon's complexion improved. Every time he had a stomachache, he would feel particularly tired. His eyelids were obviously fighting, but he couldn't help but half open his eyes and look at her from time to time. Wei Wei Bai sat quietly beside him, her face expressionless. When the afterglow of the setting sun shone in from outside the window, it brought a trace of gentle light to her face. The two of them stayed together quietly. There was a kind of gentleness that came from years of peace. Hipon felt at ease and fell asleep. He didn't know how long he had slept, but he heard the sound of the door closing. He opened his eyes in shock and found that Wei Wei Bai hadn't left. Instead, she walked in from the other side of the door. Did she just leave? He actually slept like a log and didn't notice at all. Hipon broke out in a cold sweat. He stabilized his emotions, afraid that Wei Wei Bai would see that he was out of control, so he immediately closed his eyes again and pretended to be asleep. Wei Wei Bai seemed to put something on the table, and then she walked to his side. Pon? She called him softly. Her voice was soft and clear, surprisingly pleasant to hear. Hipon continued to pretend to be asleep. Suddenly, her hand stroked his face. If he wasn't used to acting and rehearsing, his muscles might have tightened. Her hand gently and carefully touched his eyes. The strength of her fingertips was as light as a feather. It was full of a feeling of cherish. He was like a treasure in her hands. If only you were older. Wei Wei Bai's fingers gently slid across his lips and said somewhat self-deprecatingly, Older? Hipon sneered in his heart. Was he not old enough? The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 126. Her voice sounded with worry. You are now in the sky, so you can't see how cruel the entertainment industry is. You have offended too many people. Although you have fans, if one day you are stepped on, who can help you? Hipon didn't expect her to worry about this. Wei Wei Bai sighed. I don't have the strength now. I can't help you. He didn't need her help. Wei Wei Bai smiled bitterly. You don't want me to help you, and even if I want to advise you not to be too proud, you won't listen to me. Hipon, he was now so popular that anyone who saw him would praise him. Who dared to say that he was not good? Wei Wei Bai asked him to be modest. Hipon's heart softened. He knew what she said was right. Wei Wei Bai's fingers left his face. Hipon was still a little reluctant to part with the warmth of her fingers. When I was a child, there was a time when my face had a lot of red dots. It was very ugly. Wei Wei Bai seemed to be a little sad. Her voice was reminiscent. At that time, I was bullied, but no one helped. Everyone said that I was ugly. Who was ugly? He was the most beautiful person in the world, and the second was Wei Wei Bai. There was no third place. Everyone below them was ugly. I was very inferior. Even if the red dots on my face disappeared and I became more beautiful, I still felt that I was ugly. Hipon's eyelashes trembled. He didn't understand this kind of inferiority because he was praised since he was a child. Wei Wei Bai touched her face. Later, I started to wear makeup. Looking at my makeup face, I had some confidence to stand in front of people. Was this why she didn't dare to see people without makeup? Hipon thought that she was vain before and suddenly felt a little sad. When I first saw you, I thought you were very beautiful and confident, completely different from me. Wei Wei Bai's tone became sweet. At that time, I was always thinking about you. If only I was as beautiful as you, then I could go out without makeup. The more Hipon listened, the more uncomfortable he felt. You look good without makeup. He wanted to comfort her. Wei Wei Bai laughed. It's a pity that you don't like me, so I feel more and more inferior. Hipon felt that his heart was being twisted by something, and the pain was overwhelming. Was he the cause of her inferiority? Wei Wei Bai said with relief, I don't care now. If I feel inferior, then so be it. Anyway, I'm not acting anymore, so I don't need to pretend to be full of confidence. Hipon's heart was twisted again. She couldn't act because he suppressed her. Wei Wei Bai lowered her voice. Besides, I've already given up on you. There's no need for me to pretend in front of you anymore. His heart was no longer twisted. Instead, it was as if someone had cut off a piece of it. The bloody pain was overwhelming. Hipon sat up and said, You are beautiful. Wei Wei Bai looked at him in shock. Hipon was embarrassed. No, I mean the night is beautiful tonight. Wei Wei Bai looked at the window. It was drizzling outside. The night was cold and windy. Beautiful? Hipon was even more embarrassed. His mind was blank. What did he want to say? Wasn't he usually very talkative? How come at this critical moment, his mouth was like a zipper? He hurriedly remedied, trying to restore his excellent image. I said, What do you feel inferior about? Look at your eyes, they are like stars. Look at your mouth, it's like a rose. Look at your skin, it's not as delicate and white as yours on a snowy day. Although you're not as beautiful as me, you're also very good-looking. The download address is at https://www.sashu.com. Chapter 127. Is this comforting? Wei Wei Bai looked at him like a fool. Hipon felt that the more he said, the more unreliable he was. He was anxious and simply held her face. I said it's not worth it for you to feel inferior, and I never look at whether my friends are good-looking or not. Anyway, they are not as good-looking as me. Wei Wei Bai and the system at the same time. No, there is actually someone in this world who is more shameless than me, than the host. Hipon saw Wei Wei Bai's indifferent face and felt that he had messed up. Why is it so difficult to comfort people? Wei Wei Bai saw him like this and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her eyes were very bright, and her smile was very warm. The anxiety in Hipon's heart was washed away by this smile. Someone really laughed, and her eyes were as bright as stars. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 60. Wei Wei Bai's smile deepened. Eat something. Xiaomu said you didn't eat anything? Hipon felt guilty. You met Xiaomu? Wei Wei Bai nodded. When I came, I just met him. He walked quickly, saying that his leg was broken, and he needed to go to the hospital to see a doctor. He also asked me to take care of you. Hipon, Wei Wei Bai handed him the porridge. The rice grains were cooked, sticky and fragrant. Hipon immediately took it, drank 2 mouthfuls, and then said condescendingly, The porridge you made is very delicious. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. Oh, I bought it. Hipon almost choked on the porridge in his mouth. Why didn't she play by the rules? After eating the porridge, Hipon's stomach didn't hurt anymore, so he slowly sat up from the sofa. Wei Wei Bai also immediately got up, tidied up, and then picked up her shoulder bag. You're almost better. I'll go first. Hipon was a little anxious. It's raining outside. Wei Wei Bai said coldly, It's more romantic to take a walk in the rain. Hipon was not sure that Wei Wei Bai would stay for him. His eyes were a little gloomy. He pinched his fingers and made a decision in his heart. I have something to tell you. Wei Wei Bai was about to leave, but when she heard his words, she stopped in her tracks. Hipon's back was against the light. His face was in the shadow. There was a sense of determination and toughness. Let's sign a new contract. Wei Wei Bai turned around and saw that Hipon had already turned on the computer and was writing the contents of the contract. The computer was connected to the printer, and the contract was printed out quickly. Hipon took the contract and handed it to Wei Wei Bai. Let's sign the contract. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a moment before taking the contract, but she didn't look at it. Instead, she looked at Hipon and seemed to be hesitating. Hipon was afraid that she would go back on her words, so he immediately pulled out a pin and stuffed it into her hand. You and I are already tied together. The news about the two of us is too hot recently. Everyone knows that the two of us are a very loving couple. Wei Wei Bai said somewhat self-deprecatingly. So what? It's what they think, not the truth, isn't it? This sentence stung Hipon, and his mood was sour. But if we divorce at this time, the blow to me will be very big. Wei Wei Bai threw the contract in her hand to the ground. So what? It's none of my business. He Pon felt that he had been hit, and his heart was filled with all kinds of emotions, all of which made him sad. The content of the contract is, we pretend to be a loving couple, and when the heat dies down, we will discuss divorce. Chapter 128. Hipon said without confidence, you can ask for anything you want. If you want to film again, I'll immediately contact a big production for you. Ding. Congratulations to the host for opening a side task. Please complete a movie shooting, so that I don't give you the best acting skills in vain. The side task came unexpectedly. Wei Wei Bai thought that there were no side tasks in this plane. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a long time, then said to him, I'll think about it. Hipon was immediately overjoyed. He had been rejected by Wei Wei Bai too many times. It was rare for her to not think about it in detail, which made him very happy. Then you take your time to think about it. I'm not in a hurry. Hipon immediately picked up the contract on the ground and then stuffed it to Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai thought about it for a long time, and Hipon sat opposite her and stared at her. System, hurry up and sign it. Host, you and he have been staring at each other for a long time. I'm sleepy. They didn't need to rest, but it did. Wei Wei Bai, well, he wanted me to leave. Today he begged me to stay. I won't kill him. The system looked at her, and then at Hipon. These two guys could really stay up. They had been sitting in the middle of the night, but their eyes were still full of energy. The system silently pulled down the blindfold. It didn't care about them, so it said good night first. Wei Wei Bai, of course, couldn't stay up. She was also sleepy, so she thought about it and fell asleep on the sofa. Hipon stared at the contract, and when he looked up, he found that Wei Wei Bai was asleep. He wanted to pick her up and go to bed, but he was afraid that she would wake up and leave. He had to carefully take the quilt and cover her. Wei Wei Bai's sleeping face was quiet and soft, but with a few traces of paleness, she looked a little haggard. Hipon felt that his heart was tied to a deer, jumping to the east and jumping to the west. Anyway, it just wouldn't settle down. While she was asleep, he took the opportunity to sneak a kiss on her cheek. He left as soon as he touched her. Like a thief. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 65. Hipon didn't know when he fell asleep. Anyway, when he woke up, he didn't see Wei Wei Bai. He was shocked and looked around. Only then did he confirm that he was the only one left in the apartment. His mood suddenly changed when he saw the contract on the table. He began to feel nervous again. Bai Wei Wei wouldn't refuse, right? He sluggishly opened the contract and found that it already had Bai Wei Wei's signature. In the condition column, there was only one requirement. She was going to make a movie. Such a request was a piece of cake for Hipon. Hipon looked at the contract and couldn't help but smirk. Signing this means that you still can't let go of me. I don't believe that you can still say that you don't want me. The contract was just a means of binding. Many celebrities would sign such a contract. However, everyone had feelings. When the fake became real in the end, there were many people who were tempted. There were plenty of opportunities for him to fall in love with her. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 70. The system had given up on the treatment. It didn't want to analyze how the favorability rose. It didn't understand the world of the drama queen. Wei Wei Bai was looking at the movie. All of you, do you think I should shoot Titanic or Avatar? The system was expressionless. You can shoot the birth of the drama queen. Wei Wei Bai sighed. Oh, my acting is too good. There is no director in the world who can match me. System. Your face is so big that the basin can't hold it. // Chapter 129. Wei Wei Bai touched her face again. I have such good acting skills. I don't need to be so beautiful. System. It was wrong. This basin can hold the Pacific Ocean, but it can't hold the host's face. Wei Wei Bai suddenly thought of a problem. I'm in this plane for 3 months. How do I go back when the 3 months are up? Sudden death? He had died accidentally in the previous 2 planes, so she had forgotten to ask about it. The system flipped through the collection and pulled out the host's departure manual. Oh, each plane has a fixed way of dying. In the first plane, if you didn't die at the end, a bolt of lightning would kill you. Wei Wei Bai, fortunately, she died early and died a very heroic death. Being killed by lightning is too ugly. In the second plane, if you didn't die at the end, you would step on a skirt corner and hit a pillar to death. Wei Wei Bai, she was right to choose her dog. In the third plane, you died of leukemia. Wei Wei Bai, leukemia? After she finished speaking, her hands suddenly felt heavy. She looked down and saw that it was a stack of medical records. System. In theory, your body is already sick, but I helped you block the physical discomfort, so you can still be lively, but when the 3 months are up, you will die. This information is recorded in the hospital, and anyone can find it. Wei Wei Bai said, I hate to be sick. In reality, she was dragged down by heart disease. In the end, she was caught by Bai Yao Yao, and she was so angry that she directly died. System. When the favorability reaches 100, you can go back without pain. Do a few more tasks and you can retire, so do your best. Wei Wei Bai was moved. My system. You are so warm. My system. The system had goosebumps. You are the system. Your whole family is the system. He checked his hairstyle. It was not messy and very stylish. He also checked his clothes. They were yuppie and fashionable. He was wearing sunglasses and a mask, but he could still see his handsome outline. Good. He's perfect. The people who came to watch the movie couldn't help but take a detour. They wanted to stay away from this psychopath who was standing at the door with a mirror in her hand. He was afraid that Wei Wei Bai would not come, so he said that since it was a movie for her, she needed to watch similar movies. Dating usually started with watching a movie, followed by a meal to elevate the mood, and then finally, some sex. Wei Wei Bai saw Hipon from afar. Her footsteps were particularly hesitant. I really want to pretend that I don't know him. The system replied, me too. Hipon's sharp eyes saw by Wei Wei, and he immediately rushed to her. Then, when she was unprepared, he lowered his head and kissed her hard on the face. They kissed through the mask. Wei Wei Bai was scared and took 2 steps back. Hipon immediately took her hand and intimately intertwined their fingers. We're a loving couple now, so we have to act intimate, Hipon said cheekily. Wei Wei Bai could only let him hold her hand. Hipon took the movie tickets he bought and entered the cinema. The movie was a romance movie, and it was a big tragedy. The female lead finally died of leukemia. The male lead was alone, desperate to live with the female lead's dream. Wei Wei Bai saw this and suddenly felt that something was flowing down her nose. She quickly took out a tissue and wiped it. It was blood. The system calmly said, leukemia is like this. Nosebleeds. I'll help you stop the bleeding. Wei Wei Bai was also calm. She was used to being sick and the nosebleed soon stopped. //T. Chapter 130. Hipon was still scolding the director in his heart. Why did he shoot such a tragic movie? The name and trailer were so sweet. As a result, he saw the tissue in Wei Wei Bai's hand, which was full of blood. Hipon, did you have your period? Wei Wei Bai in the system. Wei Wei Bai pinched the tissue. No, I have a nosebleed. Hipon was worried. Why? Wei Wei Bai. Because of you. Hipon quickly took her hand. Let's go see a doctor. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. I'll drink a cup of herbal tea. Hipon said, your nose is bleeding. Maybe the heat is attacking your heart. Hipon pulled Wei Wei Bai out of the cinema and the reporters swarmed them. Hipon, was your movie date sweet? Romantic? Do you need to buy flowers? I've brought them to you. I wish you 100 years of happiness and early birth. Hipon, such a good day, such a beautiful festival. You and your wife are a loving couple. Come, smile. I'll take a sweet photo of you. Hipon, my sister really wants me to ask for your autograph. Hipon remembered the reporters he arranged. He had already thought about it. He would let these reporters praise their love. When Wei Wei Bai heard it, her mood would be better. Then they could go on a date happily. And once these reports were out, Wei Wei Bai would be embarrassed to divorce him in the future. Bai Wei Wei was stuffed with flowers. Her face was blank. What was going on? Hipon pulled down his mask and smiled proudly. Wei Wei and I. Another reporter suddenly asked, Hipon, some people suspect that you and Wei Wei Bai are in a fake marriage. Is this true? Hipon's eyes were cold. The arranged reporters had a traitor. When he returned, he would definitely break both of Little Moo's legs. Hipon immediately laughed. How is that possible? Who would fake marriage for 5 years? The reporter persisted. But you and Weiwei Bai don't look sweet at all. You don't have chemistry. This blow to the heart had pierced a hole in it. Hipon wanted to argue, but he knew that the reporter was right. He wanted to reconcile, but Weiwei Bai didn't want it at all. And I also heard that you two live separately? Another blow. His heart was shattered into pieces. Hipon couldn't maintain the smile on his face. He tried to refute. Of course not. We don't even have separate beds. How can we live separately? But I have photos to prove that Weiwei Bai stayed in XX hotel, not you. Weiwei Bai suddenly took a step forward and revealed a beautiful smile. You may have misunderstood. I appeared at the hotel because a foreign friend came here. I helped her check in, and the identity card is also mine. She finished, and her smile deepened. Today is the anniversary of our 5 years of meeting, so he insisted on dating me, just like a child. The sweetness and affection in this tone made people's hearts melt. Hipon only felt that his heart was beating very hard, as if something was about to come out. Weiwei Bai looked up and suddenly said to him, Pon, lower your head. Hipon bowed his head, and a soft kiss was printed on his lips. Bang! Hipon felt that his heartbeat broke the cold wall. He heard his own heart. He liked her. He liked her very much. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 90. To read the at https://www.sashu.com/ to read at https://www.sashu.com/txt to read the at https://m/sashu.com. Chapter 131. System. What the hell? Did the favorability collapse? What happened to it? Was there really a problem with its internal calculation? Weiwei Bai gave him a kiss. The smile on the corner of her mouth did not disappear, and the affection in her eyes was like starlight. Her fingers took the initiative to intertwine with his. Then she turned back to the reporter and said, Sometimes, some love is not shown. We have known each other for 5 years. We have already passed the age where we have to tell the world about our love. If it weren't for your request today, I might have forgotten that I should give my husband a kiss to remember the day we met. The reporter blushed and said, Then I wish you happiness. Weiwei Bai smiled beautifully, thank you. Then Weiwei Bai held the stunned Hipon, holding flowers in one hand and walking to the street. A reporter quickly took a picture of this. On the street, in the crowd, they held hands and intertwined their fingers. The two stared at each other, so sweet that it made people feel beautiful. When they walked to a place where there was no one, Hipon suddenly said, Look up. Weiwei Bai looked up. Hipon had already leaned over and kissed her. This kiss was a simple contact, but their noses were full of the breath of both sides. Hipon left her, breathing a little difficult. He blushed and turned his head away. I also owe you a kiss. I'll return it to you. His hand gripped her even tighter. The system silently knocked on the host. I may be infected with a virus. I need to kill it, and my work will be suspended for a while. Weiwei Bai. Virus? What happened? System. The favorability directly jumped to 90. It is very difficult to increase the favorability after that, and there is no big stimulation of life and death. Generally speaking, it is impossible to increase so quickly. Since coming to this plane, it had always suspected that there was a problem with its calculation of favorability. Every day, it was crazy. How did the favorability increase? Why did the favorability increase? The male lead was mad, but the favorability still increased? Obviously, there was nothing fart, but the favorability could increase to 90? This was not scientific. Weiwei Bai chuckled. You're not poisoned. You don't understand the heart of a narcissist. The system listened attentively. Weiwei Bai, for narcissistic people, they love themselves the most in the world. Therefore, in the early stages, it was the hardest to increase the favorability because he didn't admit that he would fall in love with anyone. Even if she did like him, she would always deny it. But once he admits to liking someone, the feelings that he had been suppressing will erupt. He made a person who only loved him admit that he liked him. That would be admitting that there was another person who was as good-looking as him in his world. Of course, the favorability would soar. The system was expressionless. You guys are really a match made in heaven. Narcissism meets narcissism. A match made in heaven. I'll admit that I'm not as good as you. Goodbye. Wei Wei Bai said, I won't see you out. Hipon suddenly said, I've prepared a script for you. It's a movie you're going to shoot. You're the female lead. Wei Wei Bai held the flowers and asked, Who's the male lead? Hipon guiltily looked around and was silent for a while before saying, It's me. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but ask, It's not a romantic drama, right? Hipon was even more guilty, but his heart was uncomfortable because of her disapproval. He couldn't help but refute, No. Wei Wei Bai said, Well, then what's the drama? Hipon was silent for a while before saying, It's a drama where you're secretly in love with me, and I'm also secretly in love with you, //T. Chapter 132. The movie that Hipon gave Wei Wei Bai was an entertainment industry romance film, and it had a special ability. When Wei Wei Bai got the script, she thought she was going to shoot a damn thunder drama. Hipon said seriously, You haven't acted for a long time. I guess you were already out of practice. The entertainment industry background will make you more familiar with it. Romance films are more popular, and the special ability is also because of the need for novelty. Wei Wei Bai had no objection. Anyway, she only needed to act in a movie. Even if she acted in a tunnel war, it was fine. After getting rid of the reporters that day, Wei Wei Bai was dragged by Hipon to live with him. After all, the reporters were probably still waiting at the hotel to catch evidence of their fake marriage. They had been living together for a week, living in separate rooms. Hipon would take sweet selfies from time to time and post them on Weibo. Their popularity did not decrease but increased. The movie shooting was very smooth. The script was set in the entertainment industry, and the special ability was just a gimmick. The male lead basically did not need it. It was a story of love between the film emperor and the film empress. There was no secret love at all. The 90 points of favorability had been stagnant for a long time. The sequela of the sudden increase in favorability was that it did not increase for a long time. After filming, Hipon drove back with Wei Wei Bai. The city was brightly lit. For the first time, Hipon felt that the scenery was too beautiful. Wei Wei Bai was very sleepy, but the system said it was normal. In the end, even if she did not feel any pain, there were all kinds of weakness, fatigue, and physical deterioration. Wei Wei Bai asked the system, If I can't finish the favorability in the end, will I die directly like this? The system was silent for a long time. Yes? Hipon suddenly saw a jewelry store in front of him, and his mind moved. He drove the car to the door, then put on a hat and mask, and walked in with Wei Wei Bai. Wedding rings, Hipon said to the clerk. When the shop assistant saw their clothes, she knew that they were fat sheep. She immediately took out the best diamond rings in her shop. It was so shiny that it could blind the eyes. Hipon looked around and finally saw a pair of rings that made his eyes light up. That big diamond was simply a reflection of his sparkling intentions. He immediately took out the pair of diamond rings, then took out the woman's ring and said to Wei Wei Bai, Try it. When they got married, there was nothing. He almost couldn't remember what had happened to them at that time. All he could think of was the current Wei Wei Bai. She felt that the current her was the best. Wei Wei Bai seemed to hesitate. She looked at the ring in his hand and suddenly asked, Are you proposing? Hipon's thoughts were exposed, and his face turned red. No. Yes, I am proposing. He had nothing to lose. So what if it was a proposal? It was not something to be ashamed of. Wei Wei Bai pushed the ring in his hand back. You can return it, or wait for the next person you like. Hipon's face turned white. His feelings were poured with ice water, and he was cold from head to toe. Wei Wei Bai's face was a little pale, but her expression was very serious. Hipon, I really don't have any feelings for you. So we only get along because of the contract. The ring in Hipon's hand was like a knife, cutting his hand painfully. Wei Wei Bai turned and walked away indifferently. So don't do these things that make people misunderstand in the future. Chapter 133. Hipon stood there in a daze. He suddenly felt a little wronged and a little angry. He had lowered his posture to this point. She still didn't appreciate it. For the first time, Hipon doubted himself and wondered if he was really cheap. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 85. System. Although the drop in favorability saved my IQ, you can actually accept the ring and leave this plane as soon as possible. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a long time. I think the ring is too ugly. It was so ugly that she could only go against her conscience and not accept it. That big diamond, those who didn't know would think that she was wearing a light bulb on her finger. She couldn't afford to lose face. Hipon felt that he couldn't spoil Wei Wei Bai. He wanted to have a cold war with her. He wanted to let her know that his feelings were not cheap and had dignity. Xiaomu came to the crew with a lunchbox and saw Hipon looking at Wei Wei Bai with a sad face. His face was wrinkled like a resentful woman. Xiaomu walked over, and I came to give you and Wei Wei's sister a meal. Hipon snatched the lunchbox. Don't give it to her. Just let her starve to death. He was angry for the whole morning, but she didn't even look at him. He wanted to eat her lunchbox to vent his anger. Xiaomu said bluntly, Wei Wei's sister filmed all morning. It must be very hard. Her body can't stand it if she doesn't eat. Hipon stiffened for a moment, then walked by Wei Wei's side with the lunchbox and handed it to her. Eat? Wei Wei Bai was holding the script and was reading it. She said casually, put it down. She didn't look at him. Hipon was angry. He put the lunchbox in front of her. Eat it or not, it's up to you. After that, he walked away angrily. Wei Wei Bai looked up. The indifference on her face disappeared and sadness slowly appeared. Suddenly she reached out and touched her nose. She stood up and then ran to a corner where there was no one. Xiaomu saw it and felt that something was wrong. He immediately followed. Wei Wei Bai could not stop her nosebleeds. That was why she hated being sick the most. Just as she was about to ask the system to stop the bleeding, Xiaomu's terrified voice sounded, Sister Wei Wei, what happened to you? Wei Wei Bai immediately explained, he's heaty. When Xiaomu saw her haggard face and the fact that she seemed to have a lack of appetite and diarrhea recently, he made the connection. Are you sick? One of his relatives had a terrible disease and was like that. Wei Wei Bai's nosebleed finally stopped. She frowned, her eyes full of uneasiness. No. Xiaomu was a little unsure. But my relative had leukemia and he was like this too. Wei Wei Bai was shocked. She bit her lip nervously. Seeing her like this, Xiaomu immediately reacted. He shouted in disbelief, You don't really have a terminal illness, do you? Wei Wei Bai was so scared that she took 2 steps back. This loud voice, he had a microphone. She smiled bitterly and said in a weak voice, Don't tell him, please. Xiaomu anxiously wanted to advise something, but suddenly he froze. Because he saw that behind Wei Wei Bai, Hipon was standing there with a shocked face. Wei Wei Bai also noticed something. When she looked back, her whole person was stunned. Hipon took 2 steps forward. His footsteps were a little staggered. Then he rushed to Wei Wei Bai and pulled her out. He stuffed her into the car and drove directly to the hospital. The results of the examination soon came out. Leukemia in the end stage. There was no suitable bone marrow for transplant. Hipon felt like he was living in a nightmare. He suddenly woke up and looked at Wei Wei Bai sitting next to him. You said you didn't love me because of this? Terminal illness in the end stage. So she refused to love him again? Chapter 134. Wei Wei Bai didn't answer. She suddenly reached out and took out a tissue and covered her nose. The nosebleed was flowing again. When the condition worsened, it would be accompanied by a situation of bleeding. Anyway, the condition had already been discovered. Wei Wei Bai simply didn't let the system stop the bleeding and let the body react. She got up and rushed to the bathroom. Hipon was scared and immediately followed her into the women's bathroom. Bai Wei Wei looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was deathly pale and unsightly. When Hipon rushed over, he saw that her heart was like dead ashes. He didn't know what was in his heart, regret, pain, or something else. Wei Wei. He felt that these 2 words were almost bitten out of his teeth. Wei Wei Bai threw away a lot of tissues and took out new ones. If the nosebleed wasn't stopped, it may continue to flow. She heard his voice and looked back. Hepon's eyes were red. He called again, Wei Wei. His voice was choked. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but laugh at herself. It's just being sick. Why are you so sad? You make it seem like you love me very much. Love her very much? Love her very much? Hepon's voice trembled. I didn't know you were sick. I really didn't know. The beginning of the medical record was the day he filmed the night scene. At that time, she already knew that she was sick, so she called and cried for him to go back? How did he treat her at that time? Impatience, disgust, and also bad words. At that time, what kind of desperate mood did she have when she asked him to go back? Wei Wei Bai said coldly, enough. I don't need your sympathy. Hepon's heart was full of sadness. He wanted to say something, but he was used to being arrogant. When it came to comforting people, he didn't even know how to bend down. She was right. He was not modest enough. He was not mature. He was a bastard. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 90-92. Hepon lowered his voice. He was afraid of hurting her and said, We can go for chemotherapy. There must be a way. We can wait for the right bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai said expressionlessly, I don't need chemotherapy. Hepon was indignant. You must go. I will accompany you. I will help you find the right bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai looked at him strangely, as if it was the first time she had seen that kind of look in his eyes. She suddenly sneered, Don't you hate me so much that you want me to die? For the first time, Hepon hated his past self. He almost didn't dare to look at her. Wei Wei Bai threw away the tissue again. Without the system to stop the bleeding, the nosebleed continued to flow. Hepon saw her holding the tissue and suddenly reacted. He immediately rushed in front of her and carried her in his arms. Damn it, you shouldn't be filming now. You should be hospitalized for treatment. Wei Wei Bai was startled by his actions and immediately said, Wait, I don't need. Hepon immediately yelled angrily, Shut up, you should listen to me now. Wei Wei Bai wanted to say again. Then, Hepon was afraid that she would refuse to be hospitalized again. He hurriedly said, Hating you is a thing of the past. Hating you is also a thing of the past. If there was a time machine, I would strangle myself to death. He ignored her struggle and ran to the doctor. We want to be hospitalized. I want the best treatment. The doctor was shocked. You both are sick. Do you both need treatment? / Chapter 135. Hepon didn't even care about his image and roared directly. You are the one who is sick. My wife needs to be hospitalized. You don't care about human life. My wife is so sick, and you don't force her to be hospitalized. After a panic, Wei Wei Bai was forced to the hospital bed by Hepon. Because of the nosebleed, the doctor directly transfused blood for treatment. After a long time, the blood stopped flowing and the situation stabilized. The doctor said, the patient's desire to survive is not high, and the condition has deteriorated to the point of no return. We have tried our best, but she refused chemotherapy. We can't force her. Without chemotherapy, there was no suitable bone marrow to transplant. She was just waiting for death. Hepon felt that he was living in a vacuum. Everything seemed so absurd. Even his breathing seemed to be deprived. This feeling of suffocation made him feel at a loss. Wei Wei Bai was lying in the hospital bed and looked very fragile, as if she would break at any time. But her expression was very calm, as if she was not the one who died. Hepon's lips trembled for a while before he asked, Why not chemotherapy? If he allowed his condition to worsen like this, it would be suicide. Wei Wei Bai was stunned and said weakly, It's not necessary. No one will care if I die. These words were like a knife, stabbing Hepon's whole body. Who said no one cares? I care. Now you are under my care. Bai Wei Wei's face was sad, but it wasn't for herself. She even looked a little scared. Hepon, you look like you are in love with me. Wei Wei Bai finished, then turned her face away and laughed at herself. This is my shameless imagination. Hepon was stupefied, but he did not have a trace of refute. It turned out that she didn't believe at all. Did he fall in love with her? Wei Wei Bai looked at him. Why aren't you angry? Hepon knew what she meant. If he didn't like her, he would refute angrily. He had always been so arrogant and did not give people any way out. But he was powerless to refute. He had already fallen in love with her, so how could he say that he didn't love her? Wei Wei Bai's voice finally sounded panicked. You can't possibly fall in love with me. Hipon felt that these words completely blew him up. He reached out and grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to look up at him. Wei Wei Bai, listen to me. I'll repeat myself. I hate you because of the past. Now, today, at this moment, every minute, every second, I like you. Hipon's words paused as he looked into Bai Weiwei's sad and scared eyes. He said seriously, no, I love you. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 95. Wei Wei Bai finally couldn't take it anymore. She pushed him away. Don't say such things when I'm about to die. Hipon was worried that she wouldn't believe him. Don't you know me? They were cold-blooded, selfish, and did not know how to think for others. If I didn't like you, I would buy firecrackers to celebrate your death. Wei Wei Bai, you really know yourself. Hipon was so anxious that he didn't know what to do. So you believe me, okay? I really fell in love with you. Wei Wei Bai trembled. How can you fall in love with me? Hipon felt like his heart had been dug out. This kind of pain was really not bearable. He said sadly, why can't I? Falling in love with someone is not something I can control. Wei Wei Bai suddenly reached out and covered her face. Her tears still flowed. How can you fall in love with me at this time? How can you fall in love with me when I give up everything and can't take it back? Hipon, you are so cruel. Why didn't you fall in love with me earlier? Read the full text. Download the full text. Read the full text. Chapter 136. Hipon could hear the despair in her voice. He reached out to comfort her, but his hand had not yet reached out. Wei Wei Bai had already turned around and laid down. You go, I need to calm down. At this time, Hipon was at a loss as to what to do. But seeing her thin back, almost disappearing weakness, his nose was sour, and something fell from his eyes. Hipon endured the sourness in his throat and said, Then I'll go outside. Call me if you need anything. Hipon finished and looked at her deeply. Then he went out and just closed the door of the ward. There were doctors and nurses pushing a medical emergency bed with a person lying on it, covered with a white cloth. The doctor sighed. How sad the family will be if they can't be saved at such a young age. The nurse said, There is no other way. We have tried our best. If we can't, we can't. The doctor and the nurse walked away. Hipon leaned against the door and finally couldn't stand it. A huge wave of sadness surged, and he couldn't hold it anymore. He bent down and wiped his face with his hands, but the tears couldn't be controlled and flowed down the gaps between his fingers. Why did he fall in love with her now? When she was just sick, before she gave up treatment, what did he do? It was he who broke her hope with his own hands. It was he who didn't want her. It was he who pushed her into this kind of hell. Hipon, you are an idiot. Xiaomu rushed to the hospital and saw Hipon's tearful face. Ngu. Xiaomu looked at him in surprise. Hipon looked up with red eyes and suddenly said, Give me a punch. Xiaomu's face looked like his brain was broken. How can I hit you? Hipon said fiercely, Why do you talk so much nonsense? If you don't hit me, I'll deduct all your wages next month. As soon as he finished speaking, Little Mu punched him without hesitation. Hipon was punched. Although it hurt, it also sobered up a lot. Xiaomu asked worriedly, Ngu, are you okay? Do you want to punch me again? Hipon gritted his teeth. No need. Then he turned and left. Xiaomu asked, Ngu, where are you going? Hipon didn't hesitate at all. Go check the bone marrow match. If only his bone marrow was suitable for her. Meanwhile, Wei Wei Bai, who was lying on the hospital bed, was typing on the system. Can all of you be discharged? I hate hospitals. She really hated it. She had been dealing with hospitals all her life, so when she saw white things, she would feel flustered. The system's voice was dull. Just stay here. The movie is almost done anyway, and the side quests are almost done. Wei Wei Bai noticed that something was wrong with its voice. Why are you crying? The system made a tearing sound. Woo woo, so tragic. How could it be so tragic? Bai Weiwei couldn't figure it out. What are you doing? The system snorted. After wiping its nose, it said, reciting Tang poems, and then crying. I couldn't help but tear a few pages of paper to wipe my tears. Wei Wei Bai, you're memorizing Tang poems? The system was afraid that she wouldn't believe it, so it immediately spread out the piece of paper on which it used to wipe its nose and read, 10 years of life and death. If you don't think about it, you won't forget it. Thousands of miles of lonely graves. Woo woo woo, it's even worse. Wei Wei Bai, is this a Tang poem? Is this not a song poem? The bone marrow match was unsuccessful. Although it was expected, Hipon could hardly stand still. The doctor had given an ultimatum. The speed of the deterioration of the condition was amazing. Wei Wei Bai could die at any time. Chapter 137. Wei Wei Bai still refused chemotherapy. She asked to finish the movie. There was only one ending left to be filmed. Hipon said coldly, "No, you need treatment." No one thought that Wei Wei Bai's situation would worsen. Her body was so weak that it was not suitable for chemotherapy. Hipon gave up all activities and desperately tried to find a suitable bone marrow. He had been in the hospital, trying to extend Wei Wei Bai's life. He didn't dress up during this time. His most cherished hairstyle was messy. His clean chin was full of stubble. There were dark circles on his face, but his eyes were unusually quiet and fierce. He used to be arrogant and charming. Now his eyes were so deep that it made people's legs weak. Wei Wei Bai had lost a lot of weight during this time. She touched her face. "I have become very ugly." Hipon took a fruit knife and fiercely peeled an apple. "You are very beautiful. Who dares to say you are ugly? I will peel them." Wei Wei Bai smiled perfunctorily. "I just want to finish my last movie. I am afraid." Hipon peeled the apple into the core. "Don't be afraid. I am here. Don't say one. Even 100 movies will be yours." Wei Wei Bai did not speak and was silent. The silent Hipon panicked. The doctor said that her desire to survive was not high, so he had to do something to make her happy. But he didn't know how to make her happy. If filming could make her happy, why not? He immediately contacted the director and began to revise the script. There were some plots, but they were all deleted and skipped directly to the end. On the day of filming, Hipon circled around Wei Wei Bai. The ending was perfect, very good. The film emperor's ability was to share life, which could only be used once in a lifetime. Originally, the female lead was dying because of a car accident. He divided his remaining life in half and gave half to her. They could live together and die together. The last scene was a wedding scene, and they needed to try on the wedding dress. Wei Wei Bai felt weak in her joints, but she couldn't say how uncomfortable it was. The wedding dress was specially chosen by Hipon at the wedding dress shop. It was too late to order it, so he could only choose ready-made clothes. Wei Wei Bai was helped by a female assistant to change her clothes. Hipon, who was dressed in a bridegroom's suit, looked anxious. He was still calling the people he could contact to help find a suitable bone marrow for Wei Wei Bai. For this matter, he used all the connections he could. Just as he was making the 8th call, the door of the dressing room opened. Wei Wei Bai was carefully helped out by someone. Hipon looked up and the words in his mouth disappeared. For a moment, his mind was blank. She wore a wedding dress and slowly walked towards him. Her veil was draped over her shoulders, and for a moment, the lights in the shop shone on her beautiful face, giving it a dazzling halo. Hipon heard his heartbeat, and it was out of control. Wei Wei Bai looked at him. Her eyes were bright and watery. Hipon felt that he was finished. He thought, how could there be someone in this world who looked better than him? Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 97. Wei Wei Bai heard the reminder and couldn't help but smile. Hipon was hit by her smile, and his heart was moved. It wasn't that she looked better than him, but that the whole world added together couldn't be as beautiful as her. Ding! The male lead's favorability is at 98. Wei Wei Bai looked puzzled. So Hipon is a wedding dress lover? This can increase his favorability? Teeth. Chapter 138. After shooting the movie, Wei Wei Bai heard the system prompt that the side mission had been completed. Wei Wei calculated that the time was almost up, the 3 months were almost up. Hipon was also in a terrible state. He was going crazy looking for a suitable bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai's condition deteriorated too fast. Hipon didn't dare to sleep. He was worried that if he closed his eyes, Wei Wei Bai would be gone when he opened his eyes. He didn't believe in ghosts and gods. When he saw Xiaomu running to the temple to worship, he didn't stop him and even reimbursed Xiaomu for the incense. Wei Wei Bai didn't care about the strategy. She didn't expect that the system would help her block the discomfort. Her body would be so weak that she couldn't get out of bed. Hipon walked in from outside the ward and saw Wei Wei Bai with her eyes closed quietly. He felt sour in his heart, but he showed a smile. He didn't want Wei Wei Bai to know how bad her situation was. Hipon bent down and whispered in her ear, Wei Wei. Wei Wei Bai opened her eyes and saw Hipon's close-up face. She was almost scared. The system, this idiot, often didn't remind her of the arrival of the male lead. Hipon saw that she was awake, took out his and said, let's take a picture. Wei Wei Bai frowned. Although she was narcissistic, she was particularly self-aware. Her current state must be ugly. If she took a picture, wouldn't it leave a black history? Hipon saw her reluctance and suddenly said, do you know why there are seams in your fingers? As he spoke, he picked up her hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. Their fingers intertwined tightly. That's to wait for another person to fill it. Wei Wei Bai was expressionless. There are no seams. Where do the fingers come from? Isn't that just a piece of meat pie? Hipon laughed. Ha ha ha. Yes, you are so humorous, so funny. Why don't you laugh? Wei Wei Bai looked at him with a look of concern. What a do? The male lead's favorability rose, but his IQ plummeted. Hipon suddenly reached out and caught her off guard. Wei Wei Bai was ticklish and burst out laughing. Hipon, who was already prepared, immediately raised his phone. He smiled sweetly and kissed her cheek, and a photo was taken. Hipon laughed. Jokes don't work. I can only use physical attacks. Then, he posted on Weibo, today, I'm still as sweet as ever with my baby. She's sick, but she's always been optimistic. There was still no match for the bone marrow, and I tried my best to find one. He had a lot of fans, so it would be much faster to use the human wave tactic to find the bone marrow. Wei Wei Bai couldn't wait any longer. After Hipon posted on Weibo, he gave Wei Wei Bai a bowl of fish soup and fed it to her. Wei Wei Bai felt that Hipon's transformation from a rabid dog to a loyal dog was completely smooth. She took a sip of the fish soup and could see that his eyes were sparkling with happiness. Wei Wei Bai suddenly said softly, the Golden Silk Awards recently nominated you for Best Actor again. Hipon had already won many Best Actor awards. But the Golden Silk Awards were different. This award was called the Eastern Oscar. After winning it, Hipon was basically invincible in China. Hipon didn't care and said, there are hundreds of awards waiting for me every year. If I have to participate in every award, I don't need to film anymore. The company was crazy. It didn't matter if he didn't film or work for a while. After all, the fans he had accumulated over the years wouldn't disappear in a few days. But the Golden Silk Awards must be won. /T. Chapter 139. That was a super award. But for the current Hipon, not to mention the Golden Silk Award, even if it was the world's most beautiful award, he wouldn't go. Wei Wei Bai raised her eyes and looked at him for a few seconds before saying seriously, I want to see you standing on the podium. Hipon's action of feeding her soup paused. He seemed to be considering whether to leave her for a while to receive the award. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was probably the company calling to urge him. Hipon didn't want Wei Wei Bai to worry. He put down the bowl and said that he was going to answer the phone and went out. After he finished the call, he must turn off his phone. Why were so many people disturbing them? Hipon looked at the caller ID. It was Xiaomu. When the call was connected, Xiaomu's voice was unusually happy. Ngu's sister Wei Wei can be saved. Hipon's ears rang. The emotion that came up in his heart was not ecstasy. It was humble gratitude. At this moment, he felt that he was as small as a speck of dust. He couldn't bear such a huge surprise. Hipon turned off the phone and walked into the ward. He saw Wei Wei Bai's quiet side profile. After she fell ill, she had been quiet. She didn't cry out in pain, nor did she complain. Hipon walked over, bent down to hold her face, and looked deeply at her. Wei Wei Bai was stunned and heard Hipon whisper, no matter how I look at you, you are the most beautiful. Wei Wei Bai blushed. Although it was true, It was still embarrassing to hear others say so. Hipon smiled. I will go to receive the award. Wei Wei Bai kindly reminded him, you are just a nominee. If he didn't win the Best Actor award, wouldn't he be embarrassed? Hipon was full of confidence. I am the best actor, definitely. This burst of confidence, worthy of Hipon. On the night of the award, Hipon wore a black suit. It was a simple suit with no other decorations. It was very different from his previous flamboyant appearance. However, he was much more handsome than before. Even if Hipon didn't know how to act, his face alone could firmly occupy a place in the entertainment industry. Wei Wei Bai's spirit improved a lot. She sat up and said to Hipon, your tie is crooked. I'll fix it for you. Hipon walked in front of her and bowed very politely. He was afraid that she wouldn't be able to touch him, so he deliberately stretched his neck. Wei Wei Bai reached out to help him adjust his tie, and then her fingers suddenly pulled down the tie. Hipon was not on guard and bowed his head. She had already kissed his lips. This kiss retreated as soon as it touched, but it made Hebo feel as calm as a drum. Wei Wei Bai smiled and loosened his tie. You're the best actor. No one can compare to you. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at 99. There are only 3 hours left before the host leaves. The confident look on Hipon's face was bright enough to blind people. He said, wait for me to come back. I'll give you a big surprise. Wei Wei Bai nodded and watched him leave. Her mouth whispered, goodbye, Hipon. The Golden Silk Awards ceremony was broadcasted live on TV, so Wei Wei Bai could watch it. Hipon was already sitting in the audience. Among all the people present, he was the most eye-catching, so the camera often showed him. Wei Wei Bai, it's almost time. The system looked at the time. It's almost time. There's only 1 hour left. If you don't get enough favorability, you'll die. Wei Wei Bai, let's wait a little longer. Chapter 140. She had just finished speaking when on TV, the host of the award ceremony announced the Best Actor Award. This year's Golden Silk Award for Best Actor, Hipon. With last year's movie, Hipon easily defeated everyone and won the Best Actor Award. Hipon went on stage, took the trophy, and directly said his thoughts. There is nothing to thank, it's all nonsense. I came on stage to confess. Today is the 5th year I have known my wife. I have done a lot of bad things before. I am a fool who has no sense of responsibility except for my beauty. The audience was in an uproar. Wei Wei Bai in front of the TV and the system. Except for his beauty, he has nothing? This boasting is really fresh and unconventional. Hipon's eyes were serious, and his voice was low. He looked at the camera as if he was looking at someone. But from today on, I will do my best to give you what you want. You want me to grow up, then I will be mature. You want me to be modest, then I will bend. You don't want me to make too many enemies, then I will be a man who everyone loves. Hipon said this, his lips slightly curved, and his delicate eyes overflowed with a gentle light. He stepped back a few steps and suddenly gave a gentleman's salute to the camera. His words were soft and tender. So, please love me again, Wei Wei Bai. No matter how many people were present, no matter how many people were watching the TV, among thousands of people, he only saw one person. The system sighed. There are only 15 minutes left. Wei Wei Bai also sighed. If Hipon is the attacker, it is estimated that he will win every battle. The system was surprised. Are you tempted? Wei Wei Bai strangely shook her head. I don't feel anything. The system breathed a sigh of relief. I thought I was malfunctioning. Wei Wei Bai heard something wrong. What do you mean by malfunctioning? The system said very easily. I turned on the host's emotional deprivation device. As long as you are in the state of attack, your feelings will be automatically deprived, and after you leave these planes, your memory will be blurred. Wei Wei Bai, what the hell? Why didn't I know about it? No wonder she was so rational. She thought that she had already cultivated into an old monster who would not be moved. Was that not the case? Ha ha ha. Isn't that a small matter? It's automatically turned on because it's afraid that the host will have a split personality due to too many strategies, so it can't be turned off. Wei Wei Bai was speechless. It would be a small matter if she was killed by the system one day. She glanced at the TV and saw that Hee-pon had left after receiving the award. The place to receive the award was very close to the hospital. It was only a 10-minute walk. She guessed that Hee-pon was on his way to the hospital. Wei Bai took out her phone and called him. Hee-pon was driving. He immediately connected and answered with headphones. Wei, I'm going back. Wait for me, Hee-pon said excitedly. She didn't know that a suitable bone marrow had been found. When the bone marrow donor arrives tomorrow, she will be saved. Wei Bai laughed. Pon, I lied when I said I didn't love you. Hee-pon was stunned. He had never heard such moving words. Wei Bai's voice, through the phone, was a little weak, but it did not hide the gentleness. How can I not love you? Hee-pon felt that the whole world was like fireworks, so beautiful that he didn't know how to drive. Ding! The male lead's favorability is 100. The host has completed the task, leaving in 1 minute. Chapter 141. Wei Bai heard the reminder and continued, I just don't want you to see me sick, so I want to push you away. I don't want chemotherapy because I know you don't like ugly people. Hee-pon was moved and distressed. No matter what you look like, you are beautiful in my eyes. His car had rushed into the hospital parking lot. He opened the door and rushed into the hospital. Hee-pon had never been in such a good mood before. Wei, did you know? I chose a ring again. This time you will definitely like it. The diamond is pink. I bought the biggest one. Wei Bai smiled and said, Really? But I don't like diamonds that are too big. Hee-pon immediately changed his mind. I bought a small one. No matter how small it is, it will look good. Countdown to departure. 8, 7, 6. Wei Bai felt a familiar darkness come, and her voice lowered. I'm sleepy. 3, 2, 1. The host is ready to leave the plane. The host successfully left the plane. Hee-pon had run to the door of the ward. He stopped, tidied up his hair and clothes at the door, and calmed his rapid breathing. Sleep if you are sleepy. I will wake you up with a kiss, he said with a happy smile, and then he opened the door. Wei Bai was lying quietly on the hospital bed. Her slipped to the ground. She was pale and terrible, as if she had disappeared. Hee-pon's smile froze, and his footsteps stopped. He tried to call. Wei? She didn't answer. She was so quiet that she didn't even breathe. Hee-pon sat next to her, then held her hand and clasped his fingers. You see, I won an award. Am I not very good? Our movie can also win an award. Next year, the two of us will appear at the Golden Silk Awards together. At that time, I will be the best actor, and you will be the best actress. Everyone will envy us for being a match made in heaven. In the future, we will be the best-looking couple every year. The most loving couple will definitely be the best every year. Hee-pon said with a smile, in the movie, we are also a loving couple. If I also have the ability of the male lead, I will definitely share half of my life with you. Who told you to be in such poor health? When the doctor and Xiaomu came, Hee-pon was still talking to Wei Bai. When you are better, we will get married again. We have to do a grand wedding ceremony. I have customized a wedding dress for you. You can wear it soon. The doctor went over to check. The moment he touched her, he knew that she was gone. Mr. She has. Hee-pon immediately became fierce and violent. Get lost. My wife is resting. Don't touch her. Xiaomu cried. Ngu, Sister Wei is gone. Hee-pon nervously held by Wei's hand. Who's gone? She's still sleeping well. Tomorrow, she will be healthy again tomorrow. Xiaomu went forward to pull him. Ngu. Hee-pon fiercely pushed Xiaomu away. I am very calm now. Is the soup for Wei ready? She doesn't eat much now. If she doesn't eat more at night, she will be hungry. Xiaomu suddenly stepped forward, grabbed Hee-pon's collar with one hand, and punched him. Hee-pon was beaten back a few steps and hit the wall. Xiaomu burst into tears. Ngu, I am sorry for your loss. Hee-pon was shocked. He looked at Xiaomu blankly, as if he didn't know where he was. He pushed Xiaomu away, stumbled to the bed, and reached out to touch Wei Bai's cold face. Then he bowed his head and kissed her lips that had no temperature. I will kiss you, and you will wake up. Fast crossing system. My God, come here, /fast crossing system. My God, come here, Fast crossing system. My God, come here. Fast crossing system. My God, come here. Below to record this reading. Fast crossing system. My God, come here. Chapter 142. He said in a trembling voice, tears dripping onto her pale face. I'll kiss you and you'll wake up. He kissed her again, but she refused to wake up. Wei Wei, you can't bear not to love me, and you certainly can't bear to see me sad. Hepone pleaded. I'm so sad now, please wake up. Hepone had never been so humble, and he had never begged so desperately. He begged her to wake up. But Wei Wei didn't have any breath, and the heartbeat in her chest had already stopped. Xiao Mu, as well as the doctors and nurses on the side, couldn't bear to watch. But the routine still had to be done. The doctor tried to persuade him, Mr. He, I know you are very sad, but she is gone. You don't have to be too sad. Hepone's face was pale. He seemed to suddenly wake up, and the helplessness in his eyes made people feel distressed. He opened his mouth to say something, but the despair in the depths of his chest surged out. He looked at Wei Wei Bai, then suddenly reached for the fruit knife on the table next to him and sent it to his chest. Xiao Mu was frightened and rushed over, blocking the knife with his hand. But Hepone's strength was too great, and the knife didn't fly away, but changed direction and directly stabbed into his abdomen. Blood spread out. Hepone didn't feel the pain at all. The doctor rushed over and wanted to give him first aid, but he stretched out his bloody hand and grabbed Wei Wei Bai's fingers. This was good. They could be together forever. The darkness came, and he suddenly woke up, and there was a spasm of pain in his stomach. Yi Yuxuan looked around blankly, and his fingers were stiff as if he wanted to grab someone. He frowned, and his face was terrible. In the quiet room, only a small lamp emitted a dim yellow light. It was not a ward, and there was no body when she died. Yi Yuxuan felt the severe pain in his stomach again. He ran into the bathroom and retched in the sink. This feeling was too uncomfortable. Even if he was shot with a real gun, he wouldn't be in so much pain. For the first time, intense emotional fluctuations appeared on Yi Yuxuan's expressionless face. It was regret, discomfort, or attachment. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, he finally managed to calm himself down. His expression also returned to normal. However, his stomach was still uncomfortable. His body was very healthy, and he usually had regular checkups. There was nothing wrong with him. It was even more impossible for him to have gastric problems. But just now, he actually felt like he had really stabbed a knife into his abdomen. Yi Yuxuan knew that he was abnormal, but since it didn't affect his normal life, he didn't probe further. Now, it was affecting his body. This dream, that woman, what was it? When Yi Yuxuan heard his phone ring, he thought it was about work. Sometimes, when there was a major mistake at work, people from the company would call in the middle of the night. Yi Yuxuan picked up the phone and found that it was Qin Xiu. Why was he calling so late at night? As soon as the call connected, Qin Xiu's voice roared. Not good. Your fiancé has been kidnapped. Fiancé? Kidnapped? Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. So what? Such a small thing. Qin Xiu. Fuck. Your future wife's life or death is unknown. She has been kidnapped, and you have such a reaction. No, I forgot that you are an emotionally deficient, mentally disabled child. Your lack of reaction is a reaction. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Chapter 143. Qin Xiu, you have to do something. Since Wei Wei Bai became your fiancé, you didn't get any benefits. She has to bear all the troubles. Now, when she was in a coma, she was kidnapped. Would it kill you to raise your hand to save her? Yi Yuxuan was about to speak when his stomach spasmed again. He groaned in pain. Qin Xiu was a doctor and immediately noticed that something was wrong. What's wrong with you? Yi Yuxuan took a few deep breaths and the pain disappeared. It's nothing, just a stomach ache. Qin Xiu's face was full of question marks. Don't you have a diamond stomach? How can you have a stomach ache? Yi Yuxuan's physical fitness was exploding. It was very abnormal for such a person to feel pain. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. Maybe I really have a problem. I'll check my body again tomorrow. Qin Xiu was anxious. Now is not the time to talk about this. Are you going to save your fiancé? Yi Yuxuan's stomach ache could be delayed, but Wei Wei Bai couldn't be delayed. Yi Yuxuan was indifferent. She died because she was weak. This kind of woman can't live if she marries into the Yi family. Let her be eliminated naturally. What the hell was eliminated naturally? Qin Xiu was mad. Then you'll be eliminated naturally? Check my ass. If you don't save her, I won't talk nonsense with you. Goodbye. Qin Xiu's words couldn't leave a trace in Yi Yuxuan's heart. He lay back in bed and rationally calculated the workload for tomorrow. He didn't know if he was really tired, but he fell asleep at once. But the dream was still going on. The movie King's Secret Little Wife, 7 years later. At the awards ceremony, Hepon smiled gently and received the most important award in his life. He became the first domestic actor to win the highest international award. In the past 7 years, he has changed from being flamboyant to being mature and low-key. He has also polished himself from a diamond to a jade, making people who meet him feel like they are bathed in a spring breeze. Xiaomu was already married, but he was still his assistant. His fans, who were young and frivolous, grew up with him and became loyal old fans. He had fulfilled his promise to Wei Wei Bai. He was no longer insensible and would not easily offend others. He treated everyone seriously and humbly. He was no longer narcissistic. The only thing that didn't change was his longing and love for her. After Hepon returned to China, he still worked hard and never slacked off for a single day. Every time she returned from filming, she would go to Wei Wei Bai's grave and sit down with her. She would tell her what she had done today and what award she had won. 7 years ago, the knife he used to commit suicide was off the mark, but he didn't die in the end. Xiaomu said to him on the bed, "Sister Wei Wei wants you to be well. When she was sick, she kept rejecting you because she was afraid that you would fall in love with her." Hepon's face was pale, and he just sat there sluggishly. After Wei Wei Bai's death, his world also stagnated. Xiaomu looked at him sadly. "I have seen the things she collected. If she liked you on stage before she was sick, then after she was sick, she really loved you now." Only a person who worshipped Hepon as a star would crazily collect his things. After she was sick, Wei Wei Bai didn't collect his things, but more like she loved the realistic Hepon. That was why she cared so much about whether he was well. Wei Wei's sister tried her best to be well in her last days. You shouldn't let her down. Chapter 144. Xiaomu felt that he was almost unable to continue. You have failed her for so many years. After she died, are you going to continue to fail her? This sentence finally knocked into Hepon's heart. Xiaomu looked at him in surprise. Hepon's empty eyes were filled with tears. He suddenly leaned down and a heart-wrenching cry sounded. That was the first sound he made after not eating or drinking for many days after Wei Wei Bai's death. This cry was devoid of any form. It was filled with pain and the despair of losing a loved one. Then he began to return to normal. He began to work hard to learn how to be a man who did not fail her. 7 years had passed since he started learning. After Hepon finished another movie, he returned to the apartment late at night. The apartment was dark and empty. His heart was like an abyss, empty and lost. He opened the wine cabinet, took out the wine, and began to drink. Outside the window, the lights were bright. He stood in the window, alone. Hepon drank too much wine, and his stomach hurt again. He leaned against the wall, holding the bottle and drunkenly clutching his stomach. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something. His eyes lit up, and he immediately took out his phone and dialed a familiar number. The phone was connected. Hepon said with grievance, "Wei Wei, my stomach hurts." There was a moment of silence. Hepon was afraid that she would not believe him and emphasized again, "It really hurts. I can't find the medicine. Can you help me find it?" On the other side of the phone, Xiaomu's voice came. "Ngu, are you drunk?" Wei Wei Bai's phone number had always been charged and kept by Xiaomu, so it did not become a dead number. Hepon only knew that occasionally, when he was drunk, he would call Wei Wei Bai. Hepon heard Xiaomu's voice and was stunned. His voice calmed down. "I'm fine. You go rest." After he finished speaking, he hung up. Then he reached out and rubbed his face hard. Finally, he couldn't help but tremble. "Wei Wei, I'm in pain. Why haven't you come to comfort me?" He heard that the dead would come back on the anniversary of their death. Today was the anniversary of her death. If she came back and saw him like this, her heart would definitely ache. Then, she would appear and hug him. He had waited for so long, but she had never come back even once. He was tired, very tired. 1 year later, Xiaomu placed the bouquet in front of Wei Wei Bai and He Pon's tombs. Brethren, according to your will, put your urn together with Sister Wei Wei. Your property has also been donated according to your wishes. He Pon's stomach cancer was in the advanced stage, and there was no surgery or treatment at all. Before he died, there was no fear at all. Instead, he was very happy because he could finally die. Xiaomu looked at the pictures on their tombstones. Unlike others, this was a group photo. This photo was taken when the two of them were watching a movie and Wei Wei Bai was holding hands with him as they walked down the street. At that time, they were in their prime. He lowered his eyes and looked at her affectionately. She hugged the flowers and smiled sweetly. Even if they were dead, they would still be the most good-looking couple. Xiaomu still remembered that when he got this photo from the reporter, he signed 100 autographs for the reporter's sister. Xiaomu looked at the photo and said, "Brethren, you will definitely find Sister Wei Wei. I wish you happiness." Received 1 love point. Please choose your wish. Wei Wei Bai heard the familiar reminder and immediately said, "Lifespan? Lifespan extended by 15 days. Does the host choose to wake up now?" Chapter 145. Wei Wei Bai said without thinking, "Yes, wait, 15 days? Wasn't it a month? It had shrunk by half. Was it corrupted by the system?" The system took out a calculator and said, "During your leukemia period, you used a total of 17 bottles of painkillers, 3 doses of spirit-boosting pills, 6 pieces of clear facial masks without makeup, and a tube of hair fluttering effect. You used a total of 11 days and 23 hours of lifespan." Wei Wei Bai was shocked. "How come I didn't know I used these? You didn't even tell me." The system flipped through its collection. "I was worried that you wouldn't buy them if I reminded you." Wei Wei Bai snorted. "Do I look like such a stingy person? I'll give you every cent that I should have spent." The system said, "It's not a matter of being stingy. It's a reminder to drive you away." Wei Wei Bai frowned. "Reminder? Why would this thing drive me away?" Seeing that she didn't believe it, the system immediately cleared its throat and said in a deep and sexy voice, "Ding, dear host, you're in so much pain that your eyes are rolling back, your legs are twitching, and your whole body is trembling like a grass-mud horse running on the grassland. Do you need painkillers when you're dancing in the wind?" Wei Wei Bai, the system continued with its affectionate voice, "Ding, dear host, you're ugly, you're very ugly. You're so ugly that you're beyond the limits of human imagination. So ugly that you're beyond the light years of the universe. So ugly that you're patriotic and professional. So ugly that you're unyielding and rugged. Do you need the moisturizing effect of a facial mask? Once it works, you'll get a discount on 3, and 6 will make you a beauty." Wei Wei Bai, 6. The system said loudly, "Ah, your long hair is greasy after 3 days of not washing. Your scalp can be seen after 6 days of not washing, and your hair looks bleak after half a month of not washing. Hair fluttering effect serum. Once it works, it lasts for a year. Dear host, please make your purchase immediately, and you'll get a hemorrhoid cream within 3 seconds." Wei Wei Bai, "By my ass, get lost." The system helplessly spread its hands. "You didn't believe me." Wei Wei Bai, "Wait, there's still 3 days and 1 hour left. Where did it go?" The system hesitated for a moment before saying in a coquettish voice, "Well, I bought some sunflower seeds and fruits for you." Bai Weiwei scratched her head in confusion. "Snacks? What kind of snacks would cost her life? Was it food?" The system coughed. "Your wish fulfilled. You'll immediately wake up." Bai Weiwei's head spun, and her eyelids were frighteningly heavy. She gasped in shock and struggled to open her eyes, only to find that she was not in the hospital. She was strapped into the driver's seat of a car, which was moving forward at an alarming speed. In the driverless car, Bai Weiwei was tied to the driver's seat. In front of her was a cliff, and below the cliff was the sea. Bai Weiwei was speechless for a moment before she remembered how she should have reacted. She shouted, "Holy shit, help!" The system dug its ears. No one will hear you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Wei Wei Bai couldn't take it anymore. Why do I look like this every time I wake up? She was poisoned the last time, and this time she was in a car accident. Was she destined to die a horrible death? The system cleared its throat and recited in a loud voice, "Ding! Host, have you reached the crossroads of your life? You are at a loss, wandering around. Are you hurt all over, but you still look at poetry in the distance? Are you tied up like a hairy crab, hanging on a broken carriage that only costs $108,000? Are you going in the direction of the sea in search of your ideals? Full protection, only 15 days of lifespan. You'll get a gift when you buy it. Dear, do you want to die or live? Wei Wei Bai, I want to die. At https://www.sashu.com/ to read the full article at https://www.sashu.com to read the full article at https://m.sashu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click save at the bottom to record this reading. Chapter 146. System. Ding. The host has purchased a comprehensive protective cover. Please enjoy. Wei Wei Bai was going crazy. What's the difference between this and forcing me to buy? Lu stood on the lighthouse with a pair of binoculars in his hands. He looked at the car that had lost control and was rushing towards the cliff. It was Wei Wei Bai, whom he had kidnapped from the hospital. Bai Changyin had already suspected Bai Yao Yao, so the Bai family's bodyguards had also entered the hospital. However, he did not suspect Lu. Furthermore, Lu was in charge of the entire Bai family's security. It was easy for him to create a Wei Wei Bai. Lu watched as the car rushed out of the cliff and sneered. The car flew out of the cliff. Fly, fly, fly into the sky? Lu rubbed his eyes calmly and looked at the binoculars again. The car was soaring above the vast sea. That ecstatic posture made it look like a seagull. Lu was speechless. At that moment, his outlook on life was destroyed. The second-hand car that he bought was actually a modified private jet. Li's phone rang, and his fingers trembled as he answered the call. Bai Yao Yao asked excitedly, "Did the car fall into the sea?" Lu replied, "No, it flew into the sky." Bai Yao Yao's smile froze. "What?" Lu was about to continue speaking when he suddenly heard the sound of something approaching. He raised his head and saw the car flying towards him. With a loud crash, the car crashed into the lighthouse and crushed Lu underneath. The scene of an accident was born. Wei Wei Bai sat in the car in a daze. Was this the comprehensive protective cover? Could it be that she had transmigrated from the Harry Potter world? Before Wei Wei Bai could regain her senses, the car door was pulled open. Wei Wei Bai raised her head and was shocked. A man with a head full of blood and a pair of sinister eyes took out a gun. Wei Wei Bai was tied to the seat and could not move. "All of you, the protection is still working, right?" The system was calm. "It's not working. Wei Wei Bai, I can't take such a direct answer." Lu wiped the blood off his face. His wound was still bleeding, so he couldn't see clearly. However, it was enough to kill the immobile Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai finally saw who he was. She gritted her teeth and said, "Lu, I admit that I have not wronged you. Do you really want to kill me?" Li's fingers froze and a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. But in the end, he raised his head and looked seriously at Wei Wei Bai. "I'm sorry, miss, but I can't let her down." He owed Bai Yao Yao a life, so he had to protect her. Wei Wei Bai felt her heart turn cold. She sneered, "How noble. Just because you can't let Bai Yao Yao down, you have to frame me. Your conscience must have been eaten by a dog." The system said, "Don't. Even a dog wouldn't eat this black-hearted thing." Lu struggled for a moment before finally raising his gun. "I'm sorry, Mississippi. Please don't be an obstacle to her." Wei Wei Bai sneered. Suddenly, she froze as she looked behind Lu. Was that a helicopter? Lu also noticed the commotion behind him. He raised his gun and wanted to end Wei Wei Bai immediately. Wei Wei Bai's face was filled with fear. "Bai Yao Yao, Bai Yao Yao is flying behind you. And Lu was shocked. He couldn't care less about killing her and immediately turned around. The car was already in the sky, so it wasn't strange for Bai Yao Yao to fly as well. In the end, this delay allowed the person in the helicopter to see the gun in his hand. Without hesitation, he raised his sniper rifle and fired at his chest. And Lu knew that he had missed the best chance to kill Wei Wei Bai. He gave up without hesitation and turned around to jump down from the lighthouse. Transmigration system, my idol, come over here. 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 Download the at https://m.sashu.com// to make it easier for you to read it next time. You can click save at the bottom to record this chapter. Transmigration system, my idol, come over here. Chapter 147. The sea swallowed him in an instant, and the system's reminder also sounded. Comprehensive protection package comes with a gift, novice gift pack, 3 days of vegetative life. The host's life countdown is 3 seconds, 2 seconds, ding, the gift pack is unlocked. Please complete the next task to save your life. Wei Wei Bai, how many novice gift packs are there in the end? In addition to the novice gift pack, this broken system won't give anything else? Before she could complain, a burst of darkness had swept her away. Qin Xiu saw the car on the lighthouse. The front of the car was inside, and the rear of the car was outside. What the hell? He saw the sleeping Wei Wei Bai tied to the driver's seat, but not harmed, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. The sniper on the helicopter said that he saw the killer and fired. When he was on the boat, he was scared, worried that the bullet would hit Wei Wei Bai. Yi Yuxuan, that fool, was heartless. He was worried that if he didn't care, Yi Yuxuan wouldn't be able to find someone to marry in the future. Why did he, a doctor, have to worry about a matchmaker's heart? He felt bitter in his heart. When Yi Yuxuan finished his dream and woke up, it was already dawn. He sat on the bed, not knowing what he was thinking. Suddenly he turned over and got out of bed, opened the notebook without shoes, and opened the blank work page. Gender, female, age, young, not more than 25, name, forgotten appearance, forgotten hobby, like cemetery full of flowers, dislike, ticklish, snakes and other similar creatures, hospitals. Yi Yuxuan suddenly paused. He realized what the strange emotion rolling up from the depths of his chest was. It was desire. He longed to find her. This was the first time since Yi Yuxuan was born that he truly felt his own emotions. Although it was only a little, but for him, this was a miracle. The phone rang again. Yi Yuxuan picked it up. Qin Xiu said happily, "Haha, your fiancée was saved by me. I'm amazing. You must not know where I saved her." Yi Yuxuan hung up the phone calmly and then looked at the computer in deep thought. How could he find her? Could it be that he could only see her in his dreams? Qin Xiu, who was hung up on, was Yi Yuxuan planning to be alone for the rest of her life? At the very least, he should have asked. He hadn't even told him about his heroic rescue. Bai Wei Wei sullenly opened her eyes and was about to say something. The system trembled as it reminded him, "Don't say anything first. The taste is a little heavy. Hang in there." Wei Wei Bai was stunned. Then, she heard a man's deep and gloomy voice. "I think the Empress Dowager also knows that Bai Zhao killed the people of the Western faction guards in a vicious and cruel manner. I've always been someone who gives me a foot, and I'll return 10. He chopped off my hands, so I skinned him. It's karma." These words were spoken neither slowly nor quickly, but they were cold and treacherous. Wei Wei Bai finally realized what she had seen. The ground was covered in blood, and even the bricks on the ground were stained. A skinned human body was curled up on the ground beyond recognition. It was a mess of flesh and blood, and it was still twitching. Wei Wei Bai, the man was sitting on a chair near the door, wearing a black and red robe. His long black hair was simply tied behind him with a dark hairband, but it was not messy at all. He was clearly sitting in the sun, but his murderous aura was cold, making people shudder. He held a teacup in his hand and unhurriedly used the lid to scrape the tea. It was as if the blood on the ground was insignificant to him. Ding. The male lead's favorability is at -50. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Transmigration system. Male god, come here / transmigration system. Male god, come here. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Transmigration system. Male god, come here. Chapter 148. Wei Wei Bai heard the notification and was shocked by the -50. Her memories had not been transmitted, so she did not know what kind of enmity she had with the man in front of her. The man seemed to have sensed Wei Wei Bai's fear as he coldly curled his lips. Bai Zhao said that he wanted to see you before he died. I have always been merciful, so I fulfilled his wish. This meeting has been long enough, so I will send him on his way first. Without waiting for Wei Wei Bai to say anything, the man had already stood up and calmly walked over. Against the light, his appearance was finally revealed. His complexion was porcelain white, but his eyes were extremely dark, so dark that one could not see the bottom. Instead, it was so penetrating that it made one feel cold. His face was extremely beautiful, so beautiful that one could not distinguish his gender. There was a mole under his eyes that made him even more exquisite. This kind of beauty was not handsome, but did not have the slightest bit of femininity. Instead, it was so cold that it made one think of the pattern of a poisonous snake. He reached out and pulled out his sword, which flashed quickly. The skinned head had already rolled to Wei Wei Bai's feet. Wei Wei Bai only felt a chill run from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. This taste was so heavy that it was about to crush her. So scary, ah! The man took out a handkerchief and slowly wiped the blood on the sword. After wiping it, he threw the handkerchief away and turned around to see Wei Wei Bai's pale face. He gave a mocking smile, which was indescribably sinister. Is the Empress Dowager afraid? He slowly walked in front of her and reached out to lift her chin. Don't be afraid. This is just the beginning. How can you not be able to bear it now? His murmuring voice was full of affection, as if he was speaking to the person he loved the most. Wei Wei Bai's entire body stiffened. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and her delicate face was devoid of blood. The man coldly snorted, as if he was lamenting that this woman was only a... He let go of her chin and turned to leave, but he felt someone tugging at the corner of his clothes. That? Wei Wei Bai said somewhat awkwardly. He turned around, cold and indifferent. Your clothes are stained with blood. The man looked at her indifferently. When he crawled out of hell covered in blood, this woman probably didn't see it. Wei Wei Bai pointed at the cloth behind his buttocks. This place will cause misunderstandings. It would make people think that you're a woman dressed as a man because you're on your period. The man didn't react at first, but he had always been suspicious and sensitive. In the blink of an eye, he knew where she was pointing. Was this an insult to him? The man turned around and instantly pressed Wei Wei Bai onto the chair with a murderous look on his face. Looks like you still don't know who you are. Bitch, you are now an ant under my feet. I can destroy you with a light step. Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips. Her body was trembling, but her eyes were terrifyingly stubborn as she looked at him. The man touched her eyes with his finger. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll dig your eyes out. The system's notification sounded at the same time. Beginning memory transfer. Host receiving. The familiar headache made Wei Wei Bai frown. Cold sweat appeared on her forehead. When she realized what the original owner had done, she couldn't help but look at the man with pity. Too tragic. Too inhumane. The man's fingers suddenly attacked her neck. His fingertips lightly cut her neck and blood seeped out of her skin. What's with that look? Pity? Pity? Or are you afraid of what will happen to you? Wei Wei Bai didn't dare to move. She was afraid that if she moved, the male lead would directly cut off her head. The man felt bored. He let go of her and turned to leave. Bai Wei Wei's whole body shrank in the chair, trembling. She was really scared. This severed head, skinless corpse, and blood all over the floor. System. Calm down, calm down. Wei Wei Bai finally couldn't help it. How can we attack this guy? The original owner has a grudge with this guy. // Chapter 149. Wei Wei Bai had already despaired of this mission. In the past, no matter how strange it was only a mother's death or forced marriage. This time, she couldn't hold it at all. Just now, in front of her, the man who was skinned and beheaded, leaving behind a pool of blood, was Mu Yanjun. This guy was real, too. Eunuch. And he became a eunuch because of the previous Wei Wei Bai. Mu Yanjun was originally from a scholarly family, and he himself was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. And his family was harmonious, and his life was pleasant and smooth. The tragedy was that because the Bai family had a strong empress, it led to the relatives taking power. Even worse, the Bai family did not have a good person. Relying on the imperial power to bully men and tyrannize women, they also made a mess of the imperial court. Mu Yanjun's father was an imperial censor and stood up to reprimand the Bai family for monopolizing power and abusing power. As a result, the Bai family was enraged. Wei Wei Bai's sister, who was the empress, issued an edict directly made the Mu family a rebellious subject, and the Mu family was exterminated. But Mu Yanjun, because of Wei Wei Bai's words, kept his life. Wei Wei Bai did not know Mu Yanjun, but on the day of the beheading, when she passed by, she pointed to Mu Yanjun. "This little slave is good. Let him enter the palace to help me raise flowers." Wei Wei Bai estimated that it was just a casual remark, but the people below, to flatter the people of the Bai family, immediately complied. Mu Yanjun stayed, cut off his penis, and became a flower eunuch in the palace. And Wei Wei Bai completely forgot about Mu Yanjun. So Mu Yanjun suffered humiliation in the palace, step by step, from the deepest dirty pool of mud, crawling up bloody. For a full 10 years, from a teenager, he became today's 9,000-year-old, controlling everyone's life. And in the Bai family, before the empress died, she entrusted her only child to Wei Wei Bai. Let Wei Wei Bai enter the palace. The previous emperor had always been a sickly ghost. When Wei Wei Bai had just entered the palace, nothing had happened, but the previous emperor had already paid his respects. Wei Wei Bai became the empress dowager, and the current emperor was only 6 years old. After Mu Yanjun gained the upper hand, he raised his butcher's knife and brutally slaughtered the Bai clan. Wei Wei Bai's father was dismembered by 3,600 cuts. His mother was dismembered by 5 horses and thrown into a mass grave. His uncles, and nephews had all been cleaned up. Bai Zhao was Wei Wei Bai's younger brother. Now that he had been skinned and beheaded, he was lying next to her. The Bai family was finished now. Now it was Mu Yanjun's world. He used the little emperor as a puppet and sealed off the harem. Now whatever he said, no one dared to refute. After reading this, Wei Wei Bai held her forehead. "Lingling, do you have a rope?" The system replied, "Yes." Wei Wei Bai reached out. "Give it to me and I'll hang it. We'll meet again in the next life. I'm going to find my mother. Don't stop me." Her poor mother had died early, and now she couldn't wait to accompany her. The system replied, "The rope needs life points to buy. Your account does not have enough value to buy it." With that said, Wei Wei Bai felt even more disheartened. She had done so many tasks, but the result was that she had not earned a single cent. She felt that she was the black-hearted boss Yang Bailao, a life of oppression. Miserable. What was even more miserable was that Mu Yanjun now hated her the most. The Bai family had been cleaned up, and she was the only one left. Why not clean up? Of course, the most hated one was left for last, and slowly tortured. Wei Wei Bai suddenly remembered. Where is my side reward? Every time she did not say it, the system would not take the initiative to mention it. She suspected that if she forgot to ask for it, the system would directly embezzle her reward. /collections at the bottom to record the reading record. Chapter 150. The system flipped through the collection, but did not speak. Wei Wei Bai had already clasped her hands and prayed, "God, give me unparalleled martial arts, supreme power, millions of elite troops. If not, reward me with a country-toppling beauty. Let me captivate all living beings." The system was speechless. It said, "Side reward, give you a sky monkey, send you to heaven." Wei Wei Bai, the system chuckled. I lied to you. Ding. The system rewards the White Lotus temperament. Issued. Wei Wei Bai was silent, her eyes calm. The system worried that she would not take it easy and really want to hang herself in front of Mu Yanjun's door, advised. It's okay. The favorability is only a trivial -50. -50 means that the male lead wants to kill you 100 times a day, and he can't kill you quickly. How to torture you to death. How to kill that kind of hatred. You work a little harder, brush up the favorability, and complete the task. The system's words were like a math teacher saying, "Come, math is not terrible at all. Let's give an example. 1 + 1 = 2. Very good. You already understand the basic principles of math. Come, please prove why 1 + 1 = 2. What a fuck." Wei Wei Bai pondered for a moment, and finally said, "I remember. The original owner and Mu Yanjun were not familiar." System. Not familiar. The male lead only knows that this woman cut off his JJ, causing him to become a eunuch. So every time he is bullied, he will put the blame on the original owner. Speaking of meeting, Mu Yanjun had never seen Wei Wei Bai. If you don't count today's meeting of throwing the skinned corpse. Wei Wei Bai clapped her hands. That's good. If we were too familiar, my personality would change greatly, and he would not be fooled. The system was puzzled. Wei Wei Bai touched the system's dog head. Come, I'll show you what a lovely little white lotus is. The smell of blood wantonly spread. All the officials at the scene were quiet and terrible, each as stiff as stone. The only one sitting was Mu Yanjun, lazily leaning against the chair, his fingers tapping the armrest of the chair. His eyes slanted slightly, and the corners of his delicate eyes lifted, bringing out a trace of malicious sternness. Darren, you all serve His Majesty. You all know that His Majesty is still young and cannot be frightened. You came to His Majesty's residence with great fanfare, shouting and killing. Are you planning to rebel? The last sentence was said in an evil and ruthless manner, sending chills down people's spines. The dozens of officials kneeling on the ground were either related to the Bai family or had harmed the Mu family in the past. They were also staking everything on one throw. They wanted to enter the palace tonight to snatch the emperor away and protect themselves. As a result, Mu Yanjun was already sitting outside the emperor's residence, waiting for them to take the bait. An official said in a trembling voice, "We just want to see His Majesty." The corners of Mu Yanjun's mouth lifted, a smile that was not a smile, but his tone was very cold. "Oh, bringing a knife to see His Majesty. It seems that you think the snow in this palace is too dull, and want to use your own blood to add color." An official couldn't stand it. He shouted, "Traitor Mu! You put the Empress Dowager and His Majesty under house arrest. Everyone knows that you are a traitorous eunuch. A lowly thing like you is worthy to talk to us here. Sooner or later you will not have a good death." Mu Yanjun's fingers tapping the armrest stopped, his face as heavy as water. He casually raised his eyes and suddenly revealed a smile. "Well, then I will send you on a journey. Let you go talk to Yama. Let him come and take my life earlier." With that, he raised his hand and said coldly, "Kill them all for me." The guards who had already surrounded him pulled out their knives, and in a flash, the palace was stained with blood. Mu Yanjun got up and heard the little emperor crying in fear in the palace, and felt his mood improve. But when he thought of others calling him a eunuch, his eyes sank, and his mood became irritable again. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.